kicking off the list at number 10. Let's dive in. Barracuda. Exploring the deep is dangerous if you're a diver, of course, not because of the deadly ocean life surrounding your every direction, but because if you come up too quickly, major health problems will follow. But if not that, probably a deadly barracuda, equally as scary. This deep discovery was made by user Arira95. I'm pulling real events for this one from real deep sea divers. We're going to the real content for this one, so buckle up. One time when my parents visited Mexico, they went diving and my mom was slightly lower than my dad looking at the ocean floor. My mom had on a gold necklace that was floating in the water around her, and it was a sunny day and a fairly shallow dive at this point, so it was sparkling. My mom looked below at all the critters when my dad grabbed her and started frantically shaking her arm to get her attention. I'm sweating reading this. She looked up and a barracuda was directly in front of her, staring intently at that shiny necklace. She slowly moved up her hand to cover the necklace, and they slowly and calmly moved away from it, and it took off without bothering them anymore. But still pretty unsettling, and taught my mom to be a little more aware of her surroundings when she's diving. I mean, fair, but I mean, no one expects a barracuda. Also, if your mom wants to dive with chains on, that's pretty sick. You won't catch her slacking. Even in the depths of the sea, she's like, I'm ready. I don't care who shows up. I don't care who I bump into. Water shoes and bling. Check and check. Let's go diving. Number 9, venomous sea snakes. Last year in the deep waters off Australia's coast, of course it's Australia, always Australia, a sea snake that was once thought to be extinct has been rediscovered. How fun. He's like, psych, you thought. Just when you thought the ocean couldn't get even more dangerous, now we got new sea snakes to worry about. The short-nosed sea snake hasn't been seen in 23 years, and they would often live near Ashmore Reef. But last year, divers found one 67 meters below the surface in the twilight zone, which is pretty wild. Just lurking in the dark, just hanging out, meditating. The Australian Institute of Marine Science is responsible for this discovery, and the team calls this a second chance to protect and further understand the species. And an up-close personal encounter is brought to life from this diver. Apparently, this happens from time to time before major storms. Snakes can sense an oncoming storm, so what they try and do is latch onto something heading in the direction towards shore, so they don't have to burn energy and they can just grab onto like a barrel or something and then just, make its way there. Pretty smart. So this diver was exploring, nothing was going crazy or anything like that, and then he felt a snake wrap onto his leg because he felt a storm was coming in. The diver didn't even know that a storm was coming. The snake did, and he wrapped its snake self around his leg. As soon as I was in the shallows, it uncurled and headed up the beach where it hid under a breadfruit tree. That was from a diver named Specialist Celery. Great name, also terrifying experience. I don't like snakes in water or on land. Next, number 8, surprise tiger shark. Yeah, not something you want to see diving in the deep. A tiger shark. A glowing shark, left shark, I don't care. I want none of the shark smoke. This deep sea discovery comes from user Stormcutter. Sick name, a little bit better of a diver name. They say, I know a guy who was out diving for crayfish and lobster by the ocean. Also, the I know a guy trick, it was totally you. Don't lie to us. Crayfish often hide under the rocks, so as he was diving, a tiger shark emerged from a cave and rammed him, breaking his arm and ribs. This guy got shucked by a shark. That's insane. He said the shark was testing him out. Yeah, I'd say. That's pretty sweet, man. I'm glad you survived, honestly. I bet you couldn't wait to tell people what happened. You're like, oh, my ribs? Yeah, I got sideswiped by a tiger shark. Yeah, he's feeling testy. You know how tiger sharks do. If you're wondering what that experience may have looked like, this is footage of a rare tiger shark in New Zealand, lurking in the deep. Number 7, Humpback Mama. This deep dive happened about a year ago. A diver named Sidetrack38, that's their username, not their legal name, although that would be pretty sweet. Sidetrack38, he's like, what's up? They were exploring the ocean one afternoon when all of a sudden they got charged by a mother humpback whale. The divers shared their experience online, saying, her curious calf had swum around us and we were between her and the calf. 2 of us never even saw her coming. We were watching the baby, but our third diver saw her come. She kicked down and swam under us last minute. We didn't see anything until that 60-foot freight train passed just underneath us. Whales are beautiful. They're beautiful but terrifying creatures, my friend. Glad you didn't get a broken rib or back in this case, because whales, they like to go pretty deep.
Just view.
Just trying to figure us out.
Incredible.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Justin, you want the overheads off?
Look at that view. I hope we're getting screen captures of this.
Number 6, Mako shark. Mako sharks are one of the fastest sharks in the world. I'll start by saying that. Just get that fact in your head. Given this list so far, I would also start sweating if I were you. This is a scary one. This deep dive horror story comes from username One Dumb Diver. Great name, they clearly made this account just to share this occasion, so let's dive in. Nowadays, we dive with shark shields, which emit electronic pulses that freak the sharks out and keep them away. But back then, what we used was essentially a chainmail sleeve. The idea being that sharks hate the taste of metal, so if you give it your arm, it'll bite down, decide you're gross, and then move along. So I wait, it comes over, and I make a perfect move to give it my arm. However, just before the crunch, it occurred to me that I had left my sleeve on my bed. Now I had a huge open, gashing wound on my arm from the bite in open water, and I trailed blood everywhere. Not an ideal scenario. So once the shock finally wore off, you realize that you're in salt water, and salt and open wounds, they don't feel good. In a panic, I dropped my weight belt and shot up to the surface without any sort of waiting period. Not great. Because I hadn't been paying attention to the currents, I was approximately a quarter mile downstream of my boat, which meant that I had to swim back up to it. After getting bitten by a shark, imagine having to swim, that is a nightmare scenario. Glad you're okay. Also, you're not a dumb diver, you're experiencing the things, you're figuring it out. You're doing great. You're brave. I don't even like going in lakes. Number 5, more sea snakes. Coming from Patrick667 about a year ago as well, they posted, so 3 days ago I went snorkeling off Mimba Island in Zanzibar. Everything went normal and we started heading back, so I grabbed my net and I put my black fins, my black mask, snorkel, and black wetsuit inside. Once back ashore, I grab my bag, jump off the boat, and head to the rental office to return said equipment. At that point, I feel my bag is moving somehow. At first look, it seemed like a flat black worm squirming quickly. After rotating the bag, I realized I was looking at only the tail of a 1 meter long black sea snake, one of the most venomous reptiles ever, trying to get out of the net. Like in the lobby. How it got there, I have no freaking clue. That is a nightmare scenario. Imagine being like, thanks so much, I had a great time. Here's a sand dollar. Also, don't mind the venomous snake. Number 4, the frilled shark. Back in 2004, marine biologists discovered this dinosaur, the frilled shark, just hanging out, just lurking about 870 meters below the surface. So if you're anywhere around there, watch out. This one looks like an eel almost. It's so scary looking, it's so slippery and quick. Frilled sharks can grow up to 7 feet long and they fight in the dark. They don't need to see to attack you, which is pretty terrifying considering all these deep dive stories are all in the pitch black. So unless you're a deep diver, you're not really gonna run into the frilled shark. Have you ever dealt with one of these? Are you a diver? Are you watching this because you're a diver? Please comment down below if you are. Comment some of your personal experiences. These were a nightmare to read. I couldn't even finish half of them. Everything is so dangerous and so fast underwater. Number 3, snapping shrimp. This little guy can literally create a sonic boom as it attacks you. That's how fast it is. You won't see him coming, and neither did this diver. Here's a clip of a mantis shrimp punching through a diver's gear. Yeah, right through their water shoes. Bam!
Ow! That really hurt.
They're so quick. Oh my god, they're tiny, but they really hit. They're often found in coral reefs, oyster reefs. These little guys, these pistol shrimp, they hit their prey at 100 kilometers per hour. And in doing so, a large air bubble is created, and because this, Mike Tyson shrimp is so quick with the left hook, the following pop is around 200 decibels. The sound alone can stun its prey, and if they're lucky, it sometimes kills them. That's how you want to go out. You don't want to go out with one of these Superman punches to the neck. Number 2, comb stars. Ocean life is by far the scariest thing out there. We have no idea what's in our oceans. We discover some crazy shit every year. Some deep sea fish with bioluminescence are for sure aliens, while others are just natural predators that look scary. Like the comb star, for example. This guy was not in Finding Nemo. He would have been a weird addition. A comb star is a starfish that contains tetrodotoxin, which is this deadly neurotoxin that can cause paralysis. Yeah, Finding Nemo, that movie would be over in 8 minutes if this guy was there. Per every gram of comb star flesh, there's enough toxin to take out 500 mice. So if you have a mice problem, honestly, you can call one guy. It's a very specific weird call, but I know how you can do it. A little bit of tetrodotoxin. Tetrodotoxin? Tetrodotoxin, that's what it's called. And finally, coming in at number 1, the electric eel. Awesome, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. Great. The moray eel, first of all, don't do what he just did. Don't go up to a random eel and start rubbing it like it's a genie lamp. That's not smart. It's not a Great Dane. You don't want to do that. That was the moray eel. That one can bite your fingers off in like 2 seconds. But you should never touch an eel in the first place because a lot of them are electric. Yeah, just like that MGMT song that's now stuck in our heads. As its name suggests, there's types of eels that can mess you up even if you were to get the first hit. Specifically, the newly discovered 2.5 meter Electrophorus volti, appropriately named after Alessandro Volta, aka the guy who invented the battery. This eel can release a shock up to 860 volts, which is more than 7 times the voltage of a wall plug. A swimming wall plug that gets hungry. Nice. We love nature. I'm never swimming again. Kicking off the list at number 10, Selkies. Yeah, we'll kick this part 2 off with some Scottish mythology. How fun is that? Selkies were a load of fun. You would remember these ones if you saw them in person, definitely. Selkies were described as a sea lion almost in appearance, only there's a noticeable feature here that sets them apart. See, they can shed their skin and then take on the form of a human being. Nice, how lovely, we love it. Haggis and Selkies, all aboard. Let's go to Scotland, that's always fun. Their origins go back to the shores of Orkney and Shetland. So Scottish, those names, I love it. Yeah, I live in Shetland. The weather's shite, and over in Shetland. It's shite in Shetland. One tale is pretty haunting. I'm for sure counting this as a curse because, well, how else would you describe this scenario? When a female Selkie shed her skin once upon a time, a sailor captured her. He didn't know what he was in for at first because after he caught her, they, thinking it was a fish, sea lion creature, they were then forced into marriage. Legally, I guess, by the sea? I don't know how curses work. If the Selkie were to ever find her skin, her original sea lion fish form skin, at that point her husband would pass away instantly, and then she would be free to go back into the sea. Yeah, it's like Finding Nemo 3, maybe. That sounds like a decent plot. The ultimate right swipe. What a curse. He's like, I think I got a, oh no, it's a wife. If you're ever fishing or sailing the high seas near Scotland, anything that resembles a sea lion, just don't go near it. Don't marry it, okay? Don't go near her at all. She'll take your house and your car and your kids. You don't want any part of that smoke. She'll take everything. Number 9, Roman sea curse. The 1st century, a good place to begin with most things that are horrible. Let's talk about the Romans. The Romans did things a little different back in time. We can't figure out how they engineered aqueducts yet, or how that many people watched Colosseum battles. I can't watch an armbar on YouTube, let alone bring my family to the Colosseum. No idea how that happened, but they did it. Ancient Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, he once wrote a book on natural history, and in this book, this go-to on ancient history that we still study and refer to in school, the Elder wrote about a half-human, half-fish creature that he called Nereids. Okay, he even added to this first observation detailing that the human parts of the body were covered in rough scales. Human in appearance, but still fishy nonetheless. The Elder also recalls a seaman who would climb ships at night and sink them. Yeah, like Aquaman, only he doesn't help people. He just sinks your ship. And then you die in the sea. This is awful. Is he a curse? Is he a villain? Is this man like a super villain? I don't even know what to categorize this as. Curse, definitely a curse. Never going in the sea again. Number 8, Kalua Papa. Heading over to the beautiful Hawaii for this one. Always wanted to go. Unfortunately, now I'll never go. Haunted villages are not my thing, but if it's yours, you're in for a treat. Let's talk about it. This was once referred to as the most cursed place on Earth. Not bad, good in a resume. The coast of Molokai sounds like a good time, and from Google Earth, it looks like a paradise, really. But for over 100 years, this was an isolation coast for patients with leprosy. Yeah, long before a cure or any idea of scientific knowledge was even a thing. That, of course, had to change sometime. The laws did in 1969. Right now, barely anybody is living on that part of the island due to its haunted past. Leprosy was considered a curse back then. Literally, I'm not even making that up. That's all they thought it was. But even when help became available, some elderly patients stayed on the island. So a few thousand people were stuck on this island for almost 10 years. And some of them were like, I'm not even moving anymore. No, that's it. I mean, to be fair, yeah, you get forced to stay on an island. They're like, okay, you're good to go, you're free. It's like, no, we're 97 now. We're done. Thanks. Enjoy the medicine. We're done. Number 7, Nauru. It's safe to say the last few years have been a little rocky. Our plans had to shift a little bit, to say the least. Nauru, however, is a tiny island located in the southwestern Pacific. And they didn't have to shut anything down during this pandemic. If anything, their lives have just stayed the same. It's the world's smallest island nation. It was originally called Pleasant Island back in 1798 when Westerner John Fern first discovered it. It started out pleasant, I guess like most islands do, and then when humans get up close and start leaving garbage around, it all goes to The island's natural resource was phosphate, but overmining made the tiny island pretty much useless now, so now they consider it cursed because of its bad history. I'm like, nope, I think that's just humans getting a little greedy, but we'll call it cursed, because it's an island, and it's nice. Number 6, Kai Islands. Back in 1943, Japanese soldiers were posted up on the Kai Islands in Indonesia. They claimed to have run into a singular mermaid numerous times. She would just flip around and say what's up, hey. It's like my octopus teacher, only with a haunting mermaid instead. On the Kai Islands, multiple encounters with multiple mermaids are normal. The villagers referred to these creatures as orang iken. Orang translates to human, and iken to fish. Human fish. mermaids. While on patrol, Sergeant Taro Horiba had instructed the village chief to pass on any information if anyone sees any of these things. Of course, once I hear about this, I'd be like, yeah, can someone tell me if you see this? I would love to have a glimpse. Somebody saw one, and then they ended up capturing it, and then Sergeant Horiba recalls the mermaid as being around 5 feet tall, and their skin was pinkish, its face was human, but it had spikes around their head, and its mouth was that of a fish's mouth. So pretty haunting and pretty hard to forget, I would say. This was 1943, so not that long ago, but again, the scientific community wasn't exactly sold yet. Nothing ever came from this, obviously, or else we'd hear from it. But weirdly, I believe this encounter. It's like when it comes to curses and areas, some are kind of fishy, pun intended. This one's believable. I don't know. A carp mouth is more believable than silvery blonde hair and flirting with you as you pass by. You know what I mean? If it's described as something haunting, I'll believe it. Number 5, the Bermuda Triangle. Ah, the old classic. How cursed is this historical triangle? Do disappearances still happen today? Well, yes, definitely, absolutely. Are there the same amount of disappearances all over and not just that specific triangle in any way, shape, or form? Also yes. The Bermuda Triangle, given the amount of volume it sees every year, does not see more shipwrecks per se, but back in the early 19th century, there was a few disappearances that I could see definitely being cursed. I could see why we'd avoid that one specific Illuminati-shaped area of the ocean. The USS Cyclops, for example, this was a historic one. So far, the leading theory on this ship's fate is a rogue wave, kind of like an interstellar, just a random, massive wave that just ruins everybody's day. But it's never been found, so we still have no idea to this day. The USS Cyclops went missing back in March 1918 in the Triangle of Doom. Sadly, there were no survivors. The wreck is still MIA. With many of these ships not even making a distress call, the tales are bound to follow. The cursed idea is bound to, set in place. When it comes to sea curses, we're only just scratching the surface with the USS Cyclops. Later on in 1945, there was another incident. This one as well, pretty noteworthy, all things considered. 5 torpedo planes went missing carrying 14 men. That was bad already, but the search plane that went looking for them also went missing in the same area. So cursed? Yeah, I don't know what else to call that. It's a pretty specific area nonetheless. Number 4, the Kraken. For ages now, sailors from Norway and Greenland have shared tales of a giant sea monster. Very specific one that they call the Kraken. It's got tentacles big enough to pull you out of your boat. So yeah, you'll remember it. You're gonna want to talk about this. In 1857, Danish naturalist Japetus Steenstrup found a large squid beak. And soon after, this man was sent parts of another specimen from the Bahamas. So everyone was on board. They were trying to figure this out as a community. So he concluded with all this evidence that the Kraken is very real. And it's part of a species of giant squid called Arthitusius dux, which translates to ruling squid in Latin. Sounds very evil. Very little is known about giant squid in general. They're so hard to track, but when we did get a photo of one in 2005 and then a video of another in 2013, it's fitting the picture. Things are starting to connect. I don't know, some dots are connecting. Legend has it this thing is very real. Eyewitness reports from sailors describe a 60-foot long, tall, wide, huge giant squid. Again, could have been one of these newly discovered giant squid, but who's really to tell? The sea is massive, and I'm open to this. I'm open to monsters and curses for sure. Number 3, sirens, aka more mermaids. Here we go. The mythology surrounding sirens is interesting, but I don't really think we have any Atlanteans flirting with sailors. I don't think that's a real thing. But Christopher Columbus might disagree. On his first trip overseas in 1493, Christopher Columbus claims to have seen not 1, but 3 sirens. They followed him. He even wrote about it. He said they rose well out of the sea, but they are not so beautiful as they are said to be. Dr. Seuss guy, was he rhyming now all of a sudden? Who does he think he is? For their faces had some masculine traits. I think I would be a very cute mermaid. Thank you very much, Chris. I mean, I don't know what that means, okay. So what did he see? I mean, when it comes to correctly identifying places or people, obviously Chris can get confused. Yeah, he's not really the go-to guy. So historians believe Columbus may have seen a few manatees, which is even funnier now. He's like, yeah, mermaids aren't that attractive. Chris, those are manatees. Those aren't humans. He's like, oh, damn. It's like, you thought they were a little attractive, Chris? Their skin is pink and fleshy, so that's a fair mix-up, I guess. Not really cursed at all, but I'm like, yeah, it's the things that happen around all that is quite cursed. Number 2, the Baltic Sea anomaly. This one, pretty cursed aliens, I don't know, somewhere in the middle, here we go. Back in 2011, divers accidentally discovered this 60-meter wide, 300-meter long entity. We'll say that. or a rock. It's a big shaped rock. They found it 90 meters down in the Baltic Sea, right in the Gulf of Botnia. It's round in shape, so naturally people think this thing is a UFO that was lost many moons ago. The diving team returned, obviously, but they couldn't get a clear shot of it because there was interruptions. There was some mysterious electrical interferences when they tried to get close. A little odd right there. Those aliens, they're a ad blocker or something. I don't know what's going on. Samples of the rock were studied, and the Ocean X team gave them to a professor at Stockholm University, and among the samples were granite and sandstone. So do you guys think this is a natural rock formation? Kind of seems like it is here, but what's up with the failing technology around it? Is something else going on? Some say it's the Millennium Falcon. I don't know. The force is strong with this one. Number 1, Atlantis. Of course, we have to end on the lost city of Atlantis. What happened? Was the island cursed from the beginning? Is it a warning to the other islands near it? This map here is from 1664, and the creator of the map, Athanasius Kircher, who was a scholar who studied ancient Egypt and volcanoes, pretty historical resume, pretty accurate resume, all things considered. He also included an island that does not exist, or maybe once did and now it doesn't. He claimed the island was sourced from Egyptian maps, that he found a map in those archives and that's where he got it from. It wasn't like his idea or anything. This is starting to feel like national treasure a bit. I'm into this. The first story of Atlantis was written in 360 BC, and the description Plato gave was a lot different than how we would imagine a deep sea paradise city. He actually described it as an imperfect society. It was a cursed society, if anything, that had become corrupt by its own wealth. Atlantis is starting to sound a lot like Gotham City. I don't really think I want to go there anymore. Oh boy. Maybe that's why Batman and Aquaman, now I'm getting it. Researchers have come to a conclusion that if this island was not underwater and it was still somehow on the surface, well, they'd probably be quite aggressive. Nothing like Disney's Atlantis at all. It would just be like those uncontacted tribes, realistically.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Stargazer. These fish are absolute nightmare fuel despite their nice little name. Their eyes are located on the tops of their heads, which is what gives them their name, but they have this strange little habit of burying themselves in the sand with only their face exposed before suddenly leaping out in order to catch their prey. These guys are also a venomous fish, and if this wasn't enough, there are some species which also have an electric organ. Because they have the ability to camouflage themselves and ambush predators and can deliver both venom and electric shocks, they have been called the meanest thing in creation. In our number 9 spot today, we have the flying spaghetti monster. I know it sounds silly, but I swear this creature really does exist. This deep sea creature is a species of siphonophore that can usually be found in the Atlantic Ocean. While these guys appear to be one organism, they're actually a colonial organism, which means that they're composed of many medusoids and polypoid zooids. Zooids are multicellular units that develop from one single fertilized egg, and they combine to create functional colonies like the flying spaghetti monster. In our number 8 spot today, we have the wolf trap anglerfish. This is a species of anglerfish that is usually found in the deep waters just off of the coast of Mexico. While all anglerfish look pretty strange, these guys just might take the cake on the weirdest looking fish in the angler family. These guys were actually discovered quite recently, only a few years ago, and this, coupled with their deep sea habitat, means that a lot of information about them remains a mystery just waiting to be uncovered. Like other anglerfish, these guys also have the bioluminescent lure that is used for attracting prey. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Pacific viperfish. The Pacific viperfish can be found at different areas in the ocean depending on the time of day. They usually like to stay in the bathyl zone, which is about 1,000 meters to 4,000 meters below the surface of the ocean, but during the nighttime they will sometimes rise up into much shallower water because there is more food for them to eat. It's easy to pick out which fish is a viperfish because of the fact that its jaw is sticking out forward and then it has those extra long pointy teeth. The Pacific viperfish is predatory and mostly eats other fish, but will also chow down on crustaceans, plankton, and shrimp. This fish can grow to be about 1 foot long and are considered one of the most aggressive fish for its size. I know it's only 1 foot long, but hearing how vicious it is coupled with how ugly it is, and I really just don't want to be anywhere near this thing. One cool thing about this fish though is that they have what is called ultra black skin, and it reduces the reflection of anything that is illuminated around them so that they can camouflage themselves easier in the darkness of the deep sea. In our number 6 spot today, we have the sea spider. Okay, if you're like me and don't like the spiders that exist on land, unfortunately this one isn't going to be up your alley. Sea spiders are giant and they like to suck the life out of their prey. Yeah, How terrifying and honestly gross. They basically just latch onto their prey for dear life and suck out all the fluid they possibly can. They are gross, but they technically aren't actually spiders. These guys have a leg span that is comparable to some of the largest land spiders, but the things with these guys is that they carry their organs in their legs because, I mean, they're basically all legs. The good news is that they prefer really cold temperatures like the ones in the waters surrounding Antarctica. In our number 5 spot today we have the Atlantic wolffish. Okay, these guys are named due to their teeth, and honestly you can totally understand why. On both the upper and lower jaw they have 6 sharp and strong teeth that honestly would freak anyone out. Because of how strong their teeth are, they tend to eat hard shell creatures like crustaceans and mollusks, and they also are important to keeping the sea urchin and green crab population in check. The wolffish like to stay mostly in one area and tend to live in near freezing temperatures. They have a very cool feature though. Because they live in such cold temperatures, they have what is basically just antifreeze running through their bodies so that they don't freeze up. Even though they look super creepy, I have to admit that is pretty sweet. In our number 4 spot today we have the fangtooth fish. The fangtooth fish has a mouth full of razor sharp teeth, perfect for clutching just about any size of prey in its jaw. That's right, any size. They live in the deepest parts of the ocean, the deepest having been recorded at about 16,000 feet. That is, until they just so happen to feel like migrating up to the surface for a little vacation. Unlike a lot of other deep sea dwellers, fangtooths do not have any bioluminescent organs to attract their prey. But that is because they're not the sit and wait kind of predator, and instead they seek out their meal using their excellent sense of smell. They're more active than most deep sea dwellers and heavily rely on any light that may seep into their dark home. In our number 3 spot today we have the deep sea lizardfish. Deep sea lizardfish are a small family of deep water fish who are related to the telescope fish. These guys have flat heads and curved barbed teeth, and they grow to about 78 centimeters or 31 inches in length, which makes them a pretty moderately sized fish. They prefer to stay at depths of 1,600 meters or 5,200 feet, and they are actually one of the world's deepest living apex predators. These lizardfish are known to eat anything that comes their way, including other fish of their own kind. That's messed up. Despite the lack of light in the depths of the ocean, these guys have large eyes and pupils, and their vision is actually really important for their prey detection, as well as their well-developed eyes that allow them to see any residual or bioluminescent light. Not a lot is known about the reproduction habits, but one thing that is known is that the deep sea lizardfish have both male and female reproductive organs, which is thought to be an adaptation to low population density. In our number 2 spot today we have the faceless cusk eel. Anything that's called faceless certainly can't be good, and this eel is absolutely no exception. These guys, they don't have a face, and they honestly look like the dementors of the deep sea. The first time one of these was found was in 1873 when oceanographers aboard the HMS Challenger discovered it, but for a century no one else really came across one of these guys. Perhaps it's because they like to make their home in the icy waters located about 13,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. Just a few years ago, when these guys were sort of rediscovered, one of the leaders of the expedition, Tim O'Hara, told The Guardian that, quote, "It looks like 2 rear ends on a fish, really." Apparently the mouth of these guys sits underneath its body and can extend out to catch food before disappearing back inside its own body. So that's kinda gross, kinda cool. In our number 1 spot today we have the hagfish. There are about 76 different species of hagfish, and some of them are known to live as deep as 5,500 feet below the surface of the ocean. While the hagfish isn't particularly the best name, they are also known by an equally disgusting name of slime eels, and this is because their body produces a sort of goop that is used to ward off predators. This slime that they release has recently been found to impair the function of a predator's gills, so it seems as though it's a pretty effective shield. Aside from this defense mechanism, if their slime doesn't work and they find themselves still caught in the grasp of a predator, they can sort of tie themselves into a knot in order to escape the clutches.
Number 10. Immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish is a species of small, biologically
immortal jellyfish found worldwide in tropical waters. Given the nickname immortal jellyfish for its ability to revert back to a polyp stage while it's starving or in danger and basically escaping death, researchers believe this jellyfish may hold the cure to cancer. Under normal conditions, its life cycle is divided into 4 parts. The union of the male and female gametes produces a larva or planula. It then attaches to the seabed as a polyp, similar to an anemone. The polyps then release ephora, or a young jellyfish, into the phase prior to sexual maturity. They become jellyfish, reproduce sexually, and start over. But if they are stressed by an environmental threat, the jellyfish revert. After reproducing, they return to the previous phases, becoming polyps in the ocean floor again. As far as scientists know, jellyfish can repeat the process indefinitely. Thus, they are said to be biologically immortal. They can be eaten by a predator or fall into the hands of a swimmer, but they do not die of old age, which is pretty cool. Number 9. River at the bottom of the Black Sea. The Black Sea is one of the most isolated from the world's oceans, and there is a river flowing along the bottom of it. Now, it's just not a normal river. Oh no, it's complete with trees, leaves, and even waterfalls. One major difference is that the underwater river, when rounding a bend, moves in currents spinning the opposite direction from those on land. It has been an intriguing aspect of the ocean since it was found. According to scientists, if the river was on land, it would be the 6th largest river in the world in terms of the volume of water flowing through it. The discovery of the river, announced on August 1st, 2010, was made by scientists at the University of Leeds, and it is the first of its kind in the world. Number 8. The Mariana Trench. In the western Pacific Ocean, you will find the deepest part of the sea. The Mariana Trench is deeper than the height of Mount Everest, 43 miles wide, and a massive 1,580 miles long, which is 5 times longer than the Grand Canyon. A certified U.S. national monument, only small areas of the Mariana Trench have been explored. James Cameron reached the bottom in a submersible vessel Deep Sea Challenger in 2012, with the last successful attempt to search the ocean floor coming in 2020, when the Chinese submersible Fenduji made it all the way down. Several new species of underwater creatures have been discovered in the Mariana Trench, with most living on the surface of the ocean floor, including a type of sea cucumber. Explorers will find themselves in total darkness as they continue to understand what else lies in the deepest parts of the ocean and how marine life manages to survive. Number 7. Los Mahabalipuram Pagodas. The Los Pagodas was long considered a myth by many because of the lack of scientific evidence of its existence. But in 2004, when the infamous Indian Ocean tsunami hit, for a brief moment when the waters parted, large rock-like structures emerged from the water and were witnessed by many onlookers. The Los Mahabalipuram Pagodas in India, making it an incredible discovery. The remains of an ancient city were found in 2001 off the coast of India. Scientists retrieved many different items from the large city, including artwork, hand tools, fossilized bones, and pottery shards. What makes the discovery incredible is that the city is thought to be around 9,000 years old, which predates to the earliest Indian civilizations that sprung up 4,000 years ago. There is still not a lot known about this ancient city, as scientists and archaeologists continue to search the area for more clues and debate how old the city really is and who once inhabited it. But wow. Number 6. The 2,400-year-old boat in the Black Sea. Archaeologists working with engineers from the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, aka MAP, have discovered a 23-meter shipwreck that has laid undisturbed for more than 2,400 years. The find is believed to be the oldest intact shipwreck ever discovered. Thanks to the lack of oxygen in the Black Sea and the fact it was discovered a mile below the surface means it is exceptionally well preserved. The 75-foot vessel is thought to be ancient Greek. It still has its mast, rudders, and rowing benches. Speaking to The Guardian, Professor John Adams, the principal investigator with MAP, explained, "A ship surviving intact from the classical world, lying in over 2 kilometers of water, is something I would have never believed possible, and that it will change our understanding of shipbuilding and seafaring in the ancient world." The ship is thought to be a trading vessel. However, up to now, the design has only been seen on the size of ancient Greek pottery. The find is an archaeological first. The team have left the vessel untouched, apart from a small sample that was used to carbon date it by the University of Southampton. Number 5. $150 million of lost silver. At
At the bottom of the Atlantic for more than a century, a 150-year-old steamship had been found in 2003. The ship is the Republic, which sailed from New York in 1865, just after the Civil War, carrying 59 passengers and crew, and mixed cargo meant to help New Orleans recover from the war. About 100 miles off Georgia, battling a hurricane, it sank in waters a third of a mile deep. Its cargo of lost coins, experts say, may now be up to worth $150 million. That would make it one of history's richest treasure wrecks. It's a dream come true, said Dr. Donald H. Kagan, an expert on 19th century coins who is advising the company that discovered the wreck. There are piles of coins. The company Odyssey Marine Exploration of Tampa, Florida, who announced the find, said it hoped to retrieve all the coins. The company has retrieved more than 1,600 gold and silver coins, and none are dated later than 1865, tending to confirm the wreck's identity, said George Stem, the company's director of operations. For some reason, even the silver coins are in great condition. Part of it is surely the physical environment down there, he said. The icy deep explorers are still finding can often preserve objects, even precious metals like silver, that normally corrode easily. It's like finding a real treasure, and I would definitely like to receive some of those special coins. Number 4. Giant squid. The Kraken is a legendary sea monster of enormous size that is said to appear off the coast of Norway. Now, this is a mythical creature, but there is some truth to it. A giant squid was found on shore in Denmark in 1853. The giant squid is as elusive as the legend it inspired. It lives so deep underwater that we have limited information about it. However, we know it has the largest eyes of all living creatures, grows up to 18 meters, and is frequently hunted by sperm whales for food. The weaker giant squid generally flees when confronted by a whale, however, it sometimes fights back when cornered, and it's not unusual to find sperm whales with scars left from their battles with giant squids. It wasn't until the turn of the century in 2001 that humans saw the giant squid for the first time, and only a few years after that when it was finally photographed, making it one of the most elusive on the planet. The giant squid has long been known to exist, but capturing it on film has taken scientists extensive time and voyages to the deepest parts of the ocean where life is difficult to sustain. Number 3. Elongated skulls. Saquayum is a cenote located in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. It is a place that locals feared, and in 2012 a team of divers discovered the reason behind its fearsome reputation. An underwater survey discovered 2 chambers of the cenote littered with human bones, including deformed skulls. Archaeologists spent 2 weeks exploring the 2 chambers. The skulls belong to different sexes and ages, so they aren't thought to be sacrifices, which begs the question, why are they buried deep underwater? Archaeologist Bradley Russell, who made the discovery, believes the dead may have been buried as some form of ritual, or that they could be the victims of a plague that swept through the area. You wouldn't want them near the rest of the population, and you wouldn't want to drink the water either, Russell explained. Regardless, that's creepy. And why are the skulls elongated? Are they another species of human? I have so many questions. Number 2. Baltic Sea Anomaly. In 2011, a sonar image was taken by Peter Lindberg, Dennis Erberg, and their Swedish Ocean X diving team while searching for treasures on the ocean floor in the Baltic Sea. What the picture showed was a seemingly non-natural 200-foot circular object with passageways and stairs. The discovery looked like something out of a Star Wars film, and many people believed it was a spaceship that sank to the bottom of the ocean. Samples taken from the area in 2012 were given to Swedish scientists who said that there was nothing extraterrestrial about the area, but I'm not too sure about that. What Ocean X and the crew had found was weird, and many still think there is a UFO lying at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and there's another expedition to the area planned soon. And coming in at number 1 is giant underwater pyramids. Off the coast of Portugal in the Atlantic Ocean is an anomaly that experts have been unable to fully understand or explain. Picked up by oceanic GPS technology, measurements of a structure were found, leading researchers to believe that 2 giant pyramids of ancient times sit underwater thousands of feet below the surface. The GPS data received back has the structures with a base of 8,000 square feet and about 150 feet tall, making these pyramids pretty giant in size. But there's very little explanation into their existence, leaving it entirely up to speculation. Why would they be there? Is it another hidden city? Who knows? The pyramid has been underwater for about 20,000 years. Considering this is around the time of the last ice age where glaciation was melting from its peak 2,000 years prior, whatever civilization, human or not, that was around before the ice age could be responsible for building the pyramid. While the Portuguese Navy still hasn't determined the origins, many might question why this hasn't been first reported sooner than late 2012. To further support the idea that this pyramid could have been built by different civilizations, archaeologists from the Portuguese Association of Archaeological Research have recently discovered evidence on Pico Island that suggests their belief that humans existed in the Azores region before the arrival of the Portuguese thousands of years ago. Spooky.
Number 10. Port Royal, Jamaica. Port Royal in Jamaica used to be the most banger place on earth. It was once considered the world's best party town for pirates back in the 1600s. You know how much of a good time you have to be for pirates to collectively decide you're one of the best places to party? Pirates are maybe the best partiers of all time. However, God probably got all butthurt about this because in June of 1692, a massive earthquake hit the area, followed by a huge tsunami which buried the whole city underwater. Around 3,000 people died, and the city has been left underwater to this day. This is definitely a huge bummer. It's considered an archaeological wonder, but I think we all need to pour one out for our fallen pirate brothers and sisters. We're just trying to have a colossal rager when the whole world came crashing down on them. I hope they're all up there in heaven, getting tanked and rinsing puke out of their little funny mustaches. Number 9. The Gulf of Mexico shipwreck. I wouldn't want to be the captain of a boat. You have so much responsibility with all the people on board, and you don't even get to do the best things on a boat, which is take it easy and lay around the whole time. I especially wouldn't want to be the captain of a boat going through the Gulf of Mexico. There's over 2,000 shipwrecks in this area. Sailing through here is like your buddy dating someone crazy, even though you told them not to do it, and then big surprise they burn down their house. Well, there's one shipwreck in particular that has everyone interested. It was discovered when Exxon was laying some pipe down in the Gulf. It's a ship that's estimated to be over 200 years old. The mystery about this old boat is that all attempts to do extensive research on the vessel have failed. Computers break down, robots stop working, people have begun to speculate that the boat is cursed and whatever is inside it needs to remain a secret. Ooh. Number 8. Faunus Heracleum. This city was once one of the most important ports in the Mediterranean. There must have been an insane amount of spice rolling through this area. I bet the whole city smelled like the candle section in Bed Bath & Beyond. It's unknown why this amazing port got sucked into the ocean, probably another earthquake, or maybe it was Godzilla climbing out of the sea and smashing it into the ocean. Either or is really possible. Over the years, a ton of deep sea excavations have happened in the area and so much has been dug up. Giant statues, gold coins, lost hieroglyphs, they can all be found in this area. It seems that the city was a major hub for several different cultures to come through and make trade. It's a huge bummer to think about all the knowledge that was lost in the sinking of this city and all the spices, man. Number 7. The Aegean Sea ruins. The Greeks have a crazy long history. It's full of war, politics, coups, betrayals, some magic dudes lying in the clouds somewhere. I think one of the craziest parts about Greek history is that everyone only wore sandals. I mean, in every movie about ancient Greece, every person is in sandals the whole movie. Alexander the Great is like, I'm taking over your country, and all the people are like, your toes are out, dude. It's so disrespectful. But something even crazier than fighting war in terrible footwear is the sunken city right off the coast of Delos. It's thought to be the ancient city of Canaan where the Athenians defeated the Spartans. Archaeologists call it an underwater Pompeii since there's so much history that has been preserved in this city. This city has helped archaeologists learn so much more about the ancient Greeks. Number 6. Baia. We got another awesome place that ended up in a watery grave. Man, I guess that's why they built Las Vegas in the middle of the desert. There's no way water could suck away anyone's good time anybody was having there. Baia was a hedonistic playground where people would come to bang and party. It would even attract the rich and famous. People like Julius Caesar had vacation homes there and would come to visit constantly. This place was basically the Playboy mansion of its day. There were statues and artwork of great legends like Achilles and Odysseus, but unfortunately the city was blasted by the Saracens in the 8th century. And no one was ever allowed to have fun there anymore. Huge bummer. By the time the 1500s rolled around, the city was abandoned, because what's the point of having a beachside town with no debauchery? And after centuries of volcanic activity, the city was pushed underwater. Now it's a dive site you can visit to see all the fun that was lost. Number 5. 5. The Milky Sea. I know this one sounds super gross. The Milky Sea makes me think of a giant bowl of snot that you have to cross in order to complete some task in a video game. But this one is actually pretty cool. Popping up randomly at night, the Milky Sea is an effect caused by a ton of bioluminescent plankton in the water. This makes the sea look like it's glowing and gives off a milk effect. It kinda looks like a giant rave is going on underwater. This thing can be huge, sometimes as large as Connecticut. It's still unknown why the plankton group up like this. It could be for mating, or maybe they just like to hang out. But what is known that this has been happening for centuries, back before you could explain these things through science. So sailors thought it was all magic. That would have blown some dude's mind. The ocean is glowing. Quick, cut off your pinky to satisfy the gods. Number 4. India's underwater city. Another city lost to sea. We can assume that this one was another party town swallowed up to make sure people keep living that pleb life. Although I can't confirm whether or not this place was an endless fiesta, I can confirm that this city is old as hell. It was discovered off the coast of Dwarka, one of the coastal cities of India. After its carbon dating, it was estimated to be around 9,500 years old. If this city is indeed that old, it could mean that the reason it ended up underwater was the melting of the ice age, which happened around 10,000 years ago. This would mean that this is one of the oldest cities ever discovered. It would be 5,000 years older than the oldest Mesopotamian city ever discovered. The uncovering of the city was a major find, and it could unlock secrets as to where we came from and who our ancestors are. Number 3. The Bimini Road. The most famous underwater city of all time. It's said to have been the mecca of science and culture, and people from all over the world would come there to learn. Well, it's Atlantis, of course, the apparent lost city where Aquaman is king and pops out every now and again to help the Justice League with fish-related problems. Well, this sunken road off the coast of the Bimini Islands in the Bahamas is said to have led to the missing metropolis. It's made of giant carved pieces of limestone that are too precise to have been formed in nature, so they must have been man-made. Now, did they actually lead to a city? Well, I have no idea, but it's safe to say that there was some sort of structure built in this area out in the middle of the ocean, so who knows. Number 2. The Chinese Atlantis. Number 2. The Chinese Atlantis. North America isn't the only place with its own ancient sunken city underwater. China has a mystery city of its own. It was called Chichen, and honestly, everything there was going great. It wasn't a party city, it didn't need to be condemned by the gods, it wasn't Pompeii and it got hit with a natural disaster, it was actually just chilling in the open until 1959. What happened was the Chinese government wanted to build a new power dam, and in order to do so, they needed to sink a city. The bummer is that some of the structures in the city were over 1,300 years old. It was a piece of history that got sunk for a dam. The good news is that the city is under so much water that it has been preserved and now is a scuba diving hotspot. Number 1. Atlantis of Japan. Has no one ever thought of giving these places their own original names? Instead of calling everything that falls underwater Atlantis, I'm gonna drop my phone in a candlelight bath and call it Atlantis of my basement apartment. This joke is even funnier because I don't have a bathtub at my place. I would have to flood my stand-up shower. Definitely not as romantic. Well, this city apparently fell into the ocean 2,000 years ago off the coast of Yonaguni-jima after a massive earthquake hit. Imagine an earthquake hitting before science, and you think God is shaking the world because you didn't pray 18 times every day. Now this city sits at the bottom of the ocean. Some speculate that it's just rock formations, but there does seem to be a 25-meter tall pyramid at the site, so I don't think that's a natural rock formation.
At number 10, we have the rock skull. This is a story from Keith Ba on Reddit. He dived in an area called the Hollywood Bowl where there's cool scenery and a sunken toilet, but he found something strange when he ended up straying from the group. He strayed because his vest had slow leaks that meant he had to reinflate. Anyways, he noticed a lionfish and began watching it before his attention shifted to a rock behind it. The rock kind of looked like a skull and it had the nose section and eye section, but he was called back to the boat before he could really check it out. He did snag a quick picture of the rock before heading back, but once he developed the picture, he saw that it actually was in fact a skull. Did his friends believe him at the time? Not really, but once they saw the picture, I guess they had to, and you can check out the photo for yourself. At number 9, we have the absent red octopus. On an unguided dive with her boyfriend, Reddit user Umbria had a trippy experience. The two divers took too long when they were looking around at a depth of 38 meters. Umbria herself started getting sleepy. They started to ascend when they saw a really cool red octopus with silvery eyes, and they had to stop and laugh at its funny face and take pictures for a bit, but that made them stay at the 38-meter depth. Staying down there leads to the boyfriend's computer freaking out and slowly
bringing them back up, taking 3 spots to decompress along the way when they had only planned for 1. What happens is they reach the surface with less oxygen on reserve in their tanks than there should have been, and they begin to look for the pictures that they took at the Red Octopus because they were like, this is super cool. Thing is, they had over 20 photos of this same rock, but no octopus. At those depths, it's physically impossible to see red, let alone bright red, due to red light having the longest wavelength, so it's absorbed by water. What had happened was they spent too much time underwater and probably had nitrogen poisoning, and it's a similar state to drunkenness that, as the Reddit user says, makes you high and delirious until you pass out. They should have been tipped off that this was happening when Umbria herself was getting sleepy. If it weren't for their computer, who knows what would have happened. Could have passed out. At number 8, we have the sealed plane. This is one of many stories from Reddit user PIZZND, who I'll call Pizzend, and he used to be a deep sea diver with a large reputable company, or so he said. The team he was working with in this story I'm about to tell you were told to recover a military aircraft, so he sat at comms and logs to communicate and monitor the divers. They had been briefed on the situation, communication with the pilot was lost, and the team's job was to recover it so the military could investigate. The thing is, when the divers got to the plane, they found it completely intact, just resting on the bottom of the ocean. Pizzend said that the cockpit was still sealed, meaning the pilot did not eject. But there was no body and no sign of the pilot, even though it was completely sealed. After recovering the plane, the military took it, and Pizzend and his team never heard about it ever again. Kinda spooky. At number 7 is the locked fridge. Reddit user Count Dynamo saw something on a dive about 90 feet deep, or just under 30 meters, off of Vancouver Island in Canada, and had to notify the police. Count Dynamo said they saw a large deep freezer with a heavy industrial chain wrapped around it multiple times with about 5 cinder blocks attached. It was very, very rusted, and the deep freezer itself had to be 30 plus years old, probably more. Because one of the divers was friends with the local police, they were able to find out what was inside, and get this, the contents were 10 porcelain dolls, just wrapped and put in a deep freezer under the water. Why? No one knows. What do you think? Anyways, on to number 6, Shadow Shark. This is another story from our deep sea diving friend on Reddit, Pizzend, and he said he was installing rigging gear during a salvage job facing the boat when something smashed into the tank on his back. Several of his ribs bruised from this impact. When he turned around though, nothing was there. He reported this to the other diver that was with him and topside, and so they decided to go up. While keeping their eyes out on decompression stops, they spotted a large shadowy figure circling them. They had to wait to finish their decompression requirements because safety reasons, and during that time the shadowy figure got closer and closer. First, it became close enough that they could make out it was a shark. A massive one. As Pizzend said, he has never been afraid of sharks, but there's something about being circled by a massive shark in the middle of the ocean dangling from a chain that can instill a new phobia in the bravest men. Without a cage around them, the shark came nearly close enough to touch before the divers were lifted from the water. Pizzend said he didn't recognize the species as it was bigger than a great white shark with few gray features amongst entirely black coloration. I'm thinking maybe a basking shark that's really dark? But I don't know, those ones have funny mouths. Regardless, the team deduced that the shark is what hit him in the back as they were working below on the rigging gear. Anyways, on to number 5, no air in the deep. This one is from Reddit user Kimberto5. This diver on Reddit shared a story a dive master once told him that stuck with him. On a pretty deep dive, his dive master, or DM, found a full skeleton wearing diving gear with the air on the tank turned off. When they reported it to police, Kimberto5 said they found the full story. Apparently, the skeleton belonged to a man whose wife turned off his air while they were on a dive to murder him. Keeping this list going, let's move on to number 4, missile retrieval. Back again to Pizzend, the retired deep sea diver. Him and a dive buddy were tasked with retrieving missiles that were ejected from a military aircraft but had not detonated. They had the luck of crystal clear waters around them and had found the first missile on the ocean floor. Then his dive buddy let out a curse because he spotted a wall of sand 30 feet tall growing and approaching them. Pizzend said he hoped it was just the current sending the sand their way when it could have been something else. But anyways, the wall of sand hit them and their visibility was completely shot with complete darkness. He said he put his hand on his faceplate and couldn't see it. Like, that's right there. After that, the 2 divers heard a metallic scraping sound, still not able to see anything, and then the sand was gone. Crystal clear waters once again, but the missiles were gone. Not even feeling around under the sand led to a trace of them. Now the next one goes from tracing to retracing with number 3, stuck in a cave. Gordonta, or Gordon TA, on Reddit went diving in a cave with his buddy. They didn't lay down a line or anything to bring them back because they decided they were going to rely on a pipe they had seen on the floor of the cave as their backup, and they assumed it would lead them back out on this dive. Additionally, they thought they could follow the light at the end of the tunnel to help them, but two things. One, they went diving in the evening so the sun would go out, snuffing out their light at the end of the tunnel. And two, they assumed this pipe would lead them out, which was their biggest mistake. When they were 200 feet deep in the cave and decided to head back, it was silty and dark, so they did what they thought best and used the pipe to lead them. What it led them to was a dead end, a place in the cave they had never been to. Gordonta, or Gordon TA, said he will never forget making eye contact with his buddy as they both realized they were going to die. Lost, untethered in a deep sea cave with little to no invisibility, they ended up crawling in search of the exit and were saved by a sign his buddy remembered seeing that warned divers of the dangers of cave diving, ironically, and then they both shot up to the surface. So they got lucky. Thank goodness. Okay, on to number 2, the Phantom Diver. Just to note that our last 2 are from our friend Peasant on Reddit, the deep sea diver, as I've said many times, and this experience happened in the Bahamas on his first salvage job. He went down with a more experienced diver since it was his first go and they went just over 200 feet deep. He saw his dive buddy swim into the damaged portion of the ship, looking around, and he started asking if his buddy wanted him to tend to his air supply hose since it's dangerous to enter a sunken ship. It's like an umbilical cord and you don't want that getting bent or anything because that's your air. Anyways, his buddy said he didn't want to go into the ship and that he was on the other side, the port side. Pizzand reached out to grab what he thought was his disoriented friend before he realized there were no bubbles coming out of this thing's helmet. This thing wasn't breathing and it wasn't his friend. He backed away and reported that something else was down there to topside and he expected to be mocked, but the diving supervisor did the opposite. They left bottom and started heading back up. When Pizzand asked his supervisor about what happened, and the supervisor's message was cryptic back to him. He said he refused to put his divers in an exceptionally dangerous situations and then gave no clarification. Him and his team then declined to compete the salvage, so who knows what was down there. The last story at number 1, Pizzand said is hard to explain since he didn't know how he got to his position of looking up from the bottom of the ocean, staring up at the darkness above him, which is a creepy place to end up with no explanation. He said he realized he couldn't remember getting into the water or why he was there, he just couldn't move or control his body. Over the comms, I could hear Topside instructing the other diver to find me. How long had I been down here? How long had I been missing? The other diver told Topside that they grabbed him. I tried to shout out, but I couldn't even do that. After a few frantic minutes of communication between the diver and Topside, I noticed a shadow growing closer. It was moving towards me. Topside, I found him. The other diver reached down and grabbed my harness to drag me back to our dive stage, and as he pulled me, I rolled over and got a brief glance at my surroundings. I had been lying in a pile of human bones. Now, that's not an ideal picture when the explanation you heard from your disappearance when they grabbed him. Who's they? The skeletons? Did they grab Pizzand and then he couldn't remember? Kinda leaves a lot unexplained. And this is why I would never watch Pirates of the Caribbean.
Number 10, ping pong tree sponge. Doesn't sound scary, but it is. This one is like the Venus flytrap of the trench. Even though it's got a silly name, this creature devours its prey in the most painful way possible. Though it looks pretty harmless, kind of like a bunch of fluffy dandelions tied together. Stretching out from the stem, there are like bubblegum bubbles extending in every direction, but don't be fooled by the double bubble persona. Attached to each globe are spicules with little hooks on them. These hooks act like Velcro and attach onto the fine hairs of crustaceans. Once they hook, the sponge draws its cells towards the prey and begins a process called phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is the ingestion of bacteria, and the process takes tiny pieces bit by bit until the creature is no more. What a way to go! Ugh. It would be like someone stripping off a portion of your cells until you utterly dissolve. Ah! That's horrific! Gross. Number 9. Giantism. Considering life can indeed survive in the deepest areas of the Marianas Trench, it's opened up a lot of questions about the conditions under which life can develop and survive. Say for instance, if life can thrive here, but can it survive on Europa, for example? But not only are there creatures living there, some of them are giant. This is known as deep sea giantism. Giant amoebas and isopods have been discovered, and scientists are aching to know why. Massive amphipods have been discovered and get bigger the deeper they go, while the more shallow the water, the smaller they are. So it begs the question, what else is bigger than it should be lurking down there? Number 8. Zombie worms. If worms make you squirm, then I give you full permission to skip to number 7. But for everyone else, I'm glad you're sticking with me. Zombie worms, aka Osidax, may not be your typical zombies, but they share some similar traits. they like to eat things that are dead and alive? I don't know. These little guys, once they latch on, are capable of devouring bones of some of the biggest marine creatures on Earth. Some of the bones are as hard as stone. While they sit there looking terrifying, they use a potent acid to dissolve the bone and bacteria for their consumption. They also have a very strange mating ritual, as the males actually live inside the females, and it's the females who devour the bones. So I'm almost glad the real zombies don't reproduce that way, or at least that I know of. Like, there's probably a comic out there inspired by these special creatures, so who knows. We'll see that in the next like 30 days later, 28 days later, whatever it is. Number 7, dragonfish. Tiny but mighty has never been so strange, but it's so small. How could I be so scared of it? Dude, the whole world is terrified of spiders. So don't ask me, they're like this big, but they just make me want to die. The dragonfish is a scaleless, slimy fish with massive teeth compared to the size of its body. If one bit you, it'd be like being stabbed by tiny needles. Like many others on this list, this creature is capable of emitting its own light by way of bioluminescence. Like an anglerfish, it has a small probe that glows to attract its next meal. It feeds mainly on small crustaceans. These poor crustaceans, they got a hard life. And fish, though it's not really picky. I don't think it can be when you live down there. It can withstand the immense body-crushing weight of depths of 5,000 feet, so do not be fooled. You gotta be an incredibly powerful fish to be able to withstand that kind of environment. Number 6, the frilled shark. Fun fact about this keen survivor. The frilled shark was thought to be an extinct species until 2 men in Australia accidentally caught one in their net back in 2015. A terrifying combination of an eel and a shark. These apex predators are notorious for swallowing their prey whole. It's slim pickings down there. They don't know when they're gonna get their next meal, so you might as well just gulp it down. They have several rows of sharp teeth, perfect for hooking their prey into the depths of their stomach. They mostly enjoy squids, but have been known to enjoy some fish and even their own kind. They are incredibly rare, as you can probably guess, so very little is known about their ecology. So the information we do have are from the ones we've managed to capture. But perhaps the reason they have survived 80 million years, is because of how well they've flown under the radar. Makes you wonder if there are any other deep sea creatures we think are extinct, but are simply waiting. Ooh. Number 5, the viperfish. I guess if you don't see the light of day, there's no reason to look good, I guess. Though it is cool to be resilient, it doesn't come gift wrapped. The viperfish is yet another really unusual looking fish on this list with a ruthless attitude. It has huge fang-like teeth so big they don't fit in its already massive mouth. Tiny but mighty, this creature reaches about 11 to 12 inches in size and are capable of reaching very high speeds. They claim their meals by ramming into them and impaling them with their sharp teeth. They know this because the first vertebra right behind the head is designed to absorb the shock. Sometimes though, it plays the waiting game. It uses its long dorsal fin conveniently equipped with, together now, bioluminescent photophore. You'd think with so many creatures playing the same game, the smaller prey would be wise to it, but thankfully for the viperfish, not yet. Maybe later. Number 4, fanfin sea devils. Life always finds a way, and in the darkest, coldest parts of the world, creatures like the fanfin sea devil have come up with some weird ways to survive. The fanfin is a type of anglerfish, but instead of one bioluminescent lure, they have a whole army of them. It looks like a fish with a bunch of hairy spores stretching out from its body. They float through the water seeking any potential prey, plus they help the fish balance. Thankfully, they are pretty tiny, with the females reaching only about 6 inches in length, so if humans actually figured out how to swim down there in a wetsuit, its bite may hurt but it won't cause much damage. The males are actually so small they are considered parasites that latch onto the female in order to reproduce. Ruthless, man. Woo. These ladies are fierce down there in the depths. Number 3, the barrel eye fish. Ever wish you could see into someone's head? Well, chances are, if you've thought about it, something like it exists. The barrel-eye fish is a creature that leaves it all out on the table, has nothing to hide, and it creeps me the heck out. On top of its head is a transparent dome, and the two glowing orbs inside it are actually its eyes. It seriously looks like it swam straight out of a comic book, but hey, truth is stranger than fiction. Its eyes are ultra sensitive to light and can rotate up to see silhouettes of their prey. They capture as much light as possible, and their flat fins allow them to hover and wait for some unlucky dinner to pass on by. Weird, creepy, strange, I don't like it. Number 2, the goblin shark. Guys, this poor dude. I can't help but make a face every time I look at this creature. It looks like Tim Burton drew the ugliest thing he could think of, and nature thought it was a great idea. You know? After all, you don't get called a goblin shark for looking pretty unless you're David Bowie. He's the Goblin King, and he's so nice. The creepiest thing about them is that they can shoot their jaw out 3 inches in order to lunge out at their prey. Their long, unfortunate looking snouts are covered with sensory organs called ampullae, which will help sense electrical fields. They can technically see electricity, which is kinda cool. Their main sources of food consist of some creatures already listed, like the anglerfish, squid, rat tails, dragonfish, along with cephalopods and squid. So at least they're eating some of the other scary things, but still. Try getting that image out of your head. Like just the jaw, it's like don't like it. And last but not least, human garbage. Out of all the creatures and discoveries on this list, this one sent the biggest chill down my spine. 35,000 feet below sea level, human garbage has been found. A plastic grocery bag is the deepest known piece of plastic trash ever found at a depth of 36,000 feet inside the trench. It was found when scientists looked through the deep sea debris database, a collection of videos and photos from over 5,010 dives over 30 years. Plastic was the most prevalent of all the debris in the database, making up 89%. It was mostly the single-use plastic fork or water bottle, so think about that the next time you go for takeout. You might accidentally stab an anglerfish.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have this haunting call. Whales truly are some of the coolest animals on Earth, and humpback whales are no exception. The males of the species are known for their songs, which last from 10 to 20 minutes and are actually pretty complex. They will repeat these songs for hours at a time, and it honestly isn't exactly known why they sing these songs at all. All the males in the group will produce the same song, and it will change seasonally. The females are also able to produce noise, but for some reason it is only the males who seem to produce these long songs. It is unclear how the whales even produce these sounds, however, because they don't actually have vocal cords. This is all super cool and interesting, but the whole reason you're here is for the sound, so let's take a listen to a more haunting track released by the humpback whale. Okay, so please tell me I'm not alone in thinking that that was the most beautifully haunting sound I've ever heard come from the sea. But also imagine being alone in the ocean, not knowing what that was, and then hearing it. Probably pretty terrifying, right? At least we're all safe here in YouTube land. In our number 9 spot today, we have this marine chorus. Okay, so out of context, if I played you this sound, what would you think it is? Definitely not something underwater, right? Well, as it turns out, this sound was indeed captured under the water, and these are the sounds of fish calls. While I always expected the chorus of marine animals to sound a little more similar to the stylings of Sebastian the crab, apparently that isn't even close. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know that most fish had calls, but it turns out that our human ears just can't perceive all of the hoots, moans, barks, and chirps that take place in the vast seas. This recording actually helped scientists realize that there are fish who sing together in a chorus every day at dusk and dawn. There have now been around 800 species of fish that have been identified and confirmed to make some form of noise, and apparently some fish even engage in shouting matches in noisier parts of the ocean, which is kind of hilarious to imagine. I guess on the list of creepy noises, this one is less creepy and more just informative. In our number 8 spot today we have the whistle. This is a sound that was first recorded in 1997 by the NOAA and was the source of many mysteries for years while people speculated about what may have caused the sound. While it still isn't exactly clear, it is now believed that the sound may have come from an underwater volcano eruption. If you didn't know, underwater or submarine volcanoes are located in all oceans on our Earth, and they're extremely interesting. There are certain kinds of marine animals that only exist near these extreme environments. Many submarine volcanoes are located near the areas of tectonic plate formations, which are also known as mid-ocean ridges. There's a YouTube user called Some Canadian, and they left a comment on a video of this whistle sound that pretty much sums it up exactly. First, we'll listen to the sound played at 10 times the original speed. The comment read, quote, "It could be the sound of something moving through tunnels. 1. Volcanic eruptions and gases. 2. Something big and hungry. You choose." I think they might really be onto something there. In our number 7 spot today we have bloop. Why are all of the weirdest ocean sounds first recorded in 1997? Bloop is another one that came from that year, and it was a loud and unusual sound that was placed as occurring several times off the southern coast of South America, and it was so loud that it could be heard over 5,000 kilometers away. At first, researchers were confused because, while the sound was actually similar to known sounds of living creatures, it was just way too loud that not even the blue whale, the largest living creature, could have produced it. So what is it then? Well, as it turns out, it is in fact not the Kraken, and instead it is actually consistent with ice quakes that are generated by large icebergs as they crack and fracture. It seems like this sound, going with that explanation, doesn't really make sense, but hey, I'm no scientist. But here's the sound for you to judge for yourself. In our number 6 spot today we have the Western Pacific biotwang. In 2014, researchers and scientists heard weird sounds coming from the Mariana Trench, which, for the record, seems like the worst place for there to be strange noises coming from. For years, experts couldn't pin down this sound, and it was dubbed the Western Pacific biotwang, and while there is now a theory that was proposed by researchers from Oregon State University, they have also said that they might be entirely wrong. First, for reference, here's a little clip of the sound I'm talking about. Okay, so if you're like me, my mind immediately went to something alien related or some sort of creature that perhaps we haven't yet discovered. I mean, this is the Mariana Trench we're talking about. The theory put forward by the Oregon State researchers was that perhaps this may be a new type of baleen whale call. Okay, that's probably the best of all of the options, but I really don't like when someone tells me the answer to a scientific mystery only to tell me that that might not actually be the answer at all. While the low part of the sound would make sense to attribute to the baleen whale, it's the end high-pitched twangy part that would be incredibly unique. The wide range of frequencies in the sound are what continues to baffle those who are trying to find the source of this mysterious sound. In our number 5 spot today we have Julia. Julia is a sound that was recorded in 1999 by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, which I've already talked about today. It sounds like it could be straight out of a horror movie, so considering it was a sound that came from our ocean and at first no one could tell where it had come from, it really was quite frightening. The sound has now likely been demystified, as researchers are pretty positive they know the origin of it. It is now believed that this sound was caused by an iceberg running aground off Antarctica. The sound, however, was insanely loud. It was so loud that it could be heard over the entire equatorial Pacific Ocean autonomous hydrophone array. Researchers were later able to narrow down what they believe may have been the point where the sound originated, although they've never actually been able to pinpoint it exactly. Most of the time when people hear the Julia sound, they hear it sped up at 16 times the original speed, but today we are going to listen to a clip of the sound at regular speed because I think it is much more eerie this way. In our number 4 spot today we have knock. Okay, this is one that I'll admit was not captured by a submarine, but it was still underwater and it truly is terrifying. A few years ago, a beluga whale named Knock, who was unfortunately in captivity, was recorded as he swam below the water. Beluga whales have been called the canaries of the sea, and for good reason, but Knock really wanted to up the ante and instead blessed us all with this sound. Nock had this uncanny ability to mimic the rhythm and tone of human voices, and it truly is kind of frightening. It of course is also a little sad, as part of this was probably because he spent most of his life being forced to listen to humans speak because he was being held in captivity. Before this recording of Nock, the voices of belugas and their sometimes human-like sounds have been talked about, but Nock was the first time it was recorded, and honestly, I kind of wish it hadn't been. In our number 3 spot today we have the bioduck. Since the 1960s, this sound has absolutely stumped researchers who heard it. This sound was basically what the name attributed to it would suggest. It sounded like some sort of mechanical duck. For decades, researchers would hear this sound and it would often be heard and recorded again in the spring and winters. After all of these years though, it seems as though the answers to this mysterious sound are finally coming to light. In 2013, researchers attached sensors that collect acoustic data to 2 whales. One of those tags recorded for 18 hours and the other for 8, and the whales they were attached to were traveling with other whales in groups of 5 to 40, and they were all eating basically the entire time. Throughout this time, with the tags on the whales, there were a total of 32 calls heard, and this data is what led researchers to finally understand where the bioduck sound was coming from. As it turns out, this mysterious sound was actually the call of the minke whale. Researchers still aren't exactly clear as to what the call means to the whales, but it was a fantastic discovery that finally closed an almost 50-year-old scientific mystery. In our number 2 spot today we have upsweep. We all know how little we know about the ocean, and that also includes what kind of creatures lie in it. So while this mysterious sound out of context probably wouldn't be that freaky, when put into this situation it becomes quite a bit more eerie. This sound is referred to as upsweep, and it was caught when the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory started its sound surveillance system in August of 1991. The sound is apparently more seasonal, with its peaks in spring and fall, but it is unclear if the changing of seasons is responsible for this sound, or if it's coming from something that lurks in the ocean and remains undiscovered. Just for reference, here's a clip of that sound played at 20 times the original speed. It is possible that this sound could be coming from underwater volcanic activity, but it is also possible that it's not, so who really knows? In our number 1 spot today we have an earthquake. Okay, so to add another creepy Mariana Trench sound to this list, we have one that was taken from the bottom of the Challenger Deep. In fact, it was the first ever sound recording to be taken from the bottom of the Challenger Deep, so it's a pretty cool scientific advancement as well as a terrifying sound. Despite the crushing pressures and the fact that there's no sunlight, the Challenger Deep is actually pretty noisy, and that is because of the fact that sound travels a really long way underwater, which ends up kind of turning the Challenger Deep into a sort of echo chamber of oceanic sounds. So while the recording was able to pick up things like the sound of a boat almost 11 kilometers overhead and the sounds of whale calls, they were also able to pick up the sound of a magnitude 5 earthquake rumbling near Guam on July 16th, 2015. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the RMS Republic. In 1981, researchers were on a dive when they came across the wreck of the RMS Republic. This ship was built in 1903 and it ended up being lost at sea in 1909. Since 1909, there were plenty of rumors that began swirling that said the ship may have been carrying a whole bunch of treasure. Like treasure that could perhaps be worth billions of dollars. One of the rumors was that the ship was carrying US gold coins that would have been worth a minimum of $250,000, but there's an even crazier rumor that the ship was carrying $3 million in coins, as it was supposed to be a loan to Russia. Either way, this treasure has actually never been found, as it certainly wasn't with the ship when the researchers came across it. Do you guys think that there was never any treasure, or do you think that someone else found it first? In our number 9 spot today, we have this ancient battle gear. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far, because it really helps us out. These artifacts were actually found recently after a dive in 2013. Just off the coast of Sicily, archaeologists located what they believe may have been the site of the first naval battle. They found armor, weapons, helmets, and battering rams, and there were even
been able to date them back to around 2,000 years ago, which is so unbelievable. They believe that these artifacts are the remains of the Battle of the Agadi Islands. This was when the Romans battled against the Carthaginians for over 20 years. It is believed that around 50 ships were sunk in this time, and that is how these remains ended up there for 2 millenniums. I don't know about you guys, but it's honestly crazy to think about that stuff still being around. In our number 8 spot today, we have Dwarka. There was a time when the city of Dwarka was considered to be just a myth, so it came as quite a shock when researchers found the lost city 120 feet under the water. Testing done on the city remains has dated them back to 9,500 years ago, which could possibly place it even before the start of Egyptian and Chinese civilizations. This lost city consisted of 6 sectors that were each divided into residential and commercial areas. Apparently, the Great Flood that happened 9,000 years ago is the cause for the city to end up submerged in the ocean. It's crazy that we can look back 9,000 years ago and know things like that. The name Dwarka translates from Sanskrit to mean gateway to heaven. With the city, researchers also found construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even human bones and teeth. This city had many royal palaces that were all made with crystal and silver and had emeralds as decorations. In our number 7 spot today, we have ancient medicine. Just off the coast of Tuscany, in 2013, researchers found the Relito del Pizzino, which was a shipping vessel that they were able to date back 2,000 years ago. Among the remains of the ship, they found some items that would help give them insights into what life was like for ancient Romans, and one of the most interesting items was ancient medicinal pills. Researchers believe that these pills were used as an eye medication. They contained zinc compounds, starch, iron oxide, beeswax, and some plant-based materials. This really helped give us more insights into what was considered medicine all the way back then, but I feel like there are many things we still don't know for sure. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Antikythera mechanism. I spoke about this crazy artifact in another one of my videos. In the very early 1900s, researchers found an ancient computer just off of a Greek island. This mechanism remains on display at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens because it is honestly unbelievable. This analog computer may have had a ton of uses, and researchers aren't 100% sure about all the ways it was used, but it is known to have been some sort of astronomical calculator. It was able to predict eclipses and different planetary placements. It was found 45 meters below the water in the wreck of a ship. This mechanism has been dated back to somewhere around 87 BC, and it is thought to have been created by a Greek scientist, but unfortunately after the creation of this ancient computer, the knowledge of this kind of technology was lost before it was found again. I truly wonder where we would be technologically if we had never lost that kind of information. In our number 5 spot today, we have Gondwana. This one is hard to think of as an artifact, but I most definitely think it applies for today's list. In 2011, National Geographic published an article where they said that pieces of Gondwana may have been discovered deep in the Indian Ocean. Gondwana is the ancient continent that used to exist when Australia, India, and Antarctica were all one landmass. Apparently, they found the presence of granite and sandstone, which is unusual to find on the seabed and is much more common to continents. There isn't a ton that is known about these microcontinents, but it truly is very mysterious and very fascinating. Since these pieces were from a time when dinosaurs still roamed the earth, they have even found fossils. In our number 4 spot today, we have these Stone Age artifacts. Swedish divers found artifacts that they believe may have been the remnants of Swedish people all the way back from the Stone Age. These artifacts were found in the Baltic Sea and are believed to be 11,000 years old. They were found 16 meters below the water, and their findings consisted of animal horns, flint tools, wood, and ropes. It's crazy that researchers have the ability to date these kinds of things as far back as they have with these ones. Apparently, they were also pretty well preserved when found, which is a whole other mystery to me. It may seem like a small find, but every artifact can help give us insight to what life on Earth was like all those years ago. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Bronze Age sewn boat. 2014 saw quite an interesting archaeological discovery when the researcher Gilia Boeto revealed that they had discovered a Bronze Age sewn boat. This boat was found in a cove in Croatia and has been dated to have been wrecked in 1200 BC, which is unbelievable.
The boat is made out of wood that is sewn together by ropes, roots, and willow branches. It is 7 meters long and 2.5 meters high, and considering the fact that it is 3,200 years old, it certainly has held up remarkably. This boat has given us at least a small glimpse into how boats were made all the way back then. Sometimes I hear about things that really leave me in awe of the things that have gone on our Earth. It's so unbelievably cool to think about. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Yonaguni Monument. Who would have thought that hammerhead sharks could lead to the discovery of an ancient artifact? Well, not exactly, but in the sea just off of Yonaguni in Japan, there is a diving location that has a high population of hammerhead sharks, making it a large and popular attraction. In 1986, a diver in the area noticed some formation on the seabed that resembled a structure of some sort. This led to a team of scientists going on a dive to gather more information, and this is when the Yonaguni Monument was officially discovered. The monument is made out of sandstone and mudstone, but here's the mysterious thing. Scientists can't agree on its origins. There are some who believe that this is a natural formation, but there are some who swear that it is man-made. There are pretty reasonable arguments for both sides, and considering the fact that this thing is at least 10,000 years old, I guess it's fair to say that we may not have all the answers. In our number 1 spot today, we have Stardust. You guys, I truly don't even know what to make of this one. So apparently, 2.7 million years ago, a star exploded, and German researchers have now been able to locate pieces of it while they were drilling in the Pacific Ocean. I can't even believe that is a sentence that is true. This star was a Type 2 supernova, which means that the star had to have at least 8 times the mass of the Sun, and it also ejects iron-60 during the explosion. Somehow the star fragments ended up in the Pacific Ocean to be discovered in the remains of magnetic bacteria that were feasting on the iron from the star. Scientists believe it happened all that time ago because apparently iron-60 is way too young for Earth, whatever that means. Science is so crazy sometimes, you guys.
Number 10. Cursed tablet. We'll kick this list off with a super recent discovery, small but mighty. This tablet comes in at just 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, little. Discovered only a couple of weeks ago in the West Bank, this artifact has historians scratching their heads because it's a couple hundred years older than any Hebrew texts. Yeah, it predates the Dead Sea Scrolls by 1,350 years. The ancient letters mean to call God onto anybody who breaks this curse, so yeah, hot start for this one. There's around 40 proto-alphabetic letters, early Hebrew writing, all folded onto this little lead tablet piece. Now the fact that this small tablet mentions the curse of Yahweh is pretty alarming, and we found it too. That's incredible. This sediment comes from excavations done in the 80s on Mount Ebal. So many believe this is from the ancient stone structure, Joshua's altar, and it just made its way to us. The tablet was dated to around 1200 BC. The chemical isotopes in the tablet suggest that it's from that mountainous range in Greece, aka the Mountain of Curse. Yeah, just the thing we need right now, an ancient curse from an ancient curse mountain. Nice, keep it up. Number 9, the SS Monaco. When coming across these deep sea discoveries, it's rare that we find, well, anything at all, for starters, but to find something ages ago still intact, it's beautiful. It helps us understand history, like a 90-year-old shipwreck, for example. The SS Monaco was built in Glasgow back in the late 1800s, and the passenger vessel would take daily trips from Toronto to Hamilton. I know, I said deep sea curses, but this was only a year ago in Canada, so I had to talk about it, okay? It's fitting. The ship sunk due to too many passengers, but many believe a curse was behind this whole thing. The ship was apparently renamed, which in ancient seafaring traditions is bad luck. You don't want to do that. That's bad juju. You pick one name and you stick with it, you know? I'm not changing my name up, although I kind of want to some days. Now cut to 2018, 4 Canadian divers located it, and it's almost completely intact still. It's haunting to look at. Number 8. Mayan caves. Back in 2018, again, recently, a diver was exploring flooded caves in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, because apparently that's how some people spend their weekends. How fun is that? That's pretty epic. They were diving around the area and saw a peculiar opening and then went in. Yeah, have you ever accidentally discovered one of the largest underwater cave systems in the world? No? Well, get new hobbies, I guess. Start diving, apparently, because we're missing out. We're watching YouTube videos. This guy's exploring caves. A team of divers explored many kilometers of Mayan history without even really knowing what they were in for. National Geographic got involved and explained that these skulls, given the amount found, were more than likely involved in some sort of ancient sacrifice many moons ago. So many elongated skulls were found, suggesting the ancient Mayans were up to something a little darker last time these caves were occupied. A lot of ancient sacrifices going down in those caves. If curses are a real thing, I bet there's probably a few laying down there, so we should probably just stop, drop, and close up this shop. Number 7. Heraklion. Ancient cities, ancient gold, ancient shipwrecks. I mean, for sure there's got to be ancient curses as well in this plethora of ancientness. Before it was discovered in 2001, the ancient city of Heraklion was barely mentioned in text throughout history, which is amazing. Yet somehow archaeologist Frank Gaudio found it. It was hiding in the depths 7 kilometers off the coast, and it was pretty obvious that it was once an ancient city because there were, 64 shipwrecks, 700 anchors, and 16-foot statues just hanging around. So yeah, ancient city for sure. One vessel was around 80 feet long. It was a classical Greek flat-bottomed ship with oars on both sides and a massive sail. So it was a bit hard to find this wreckage though, seeing as it was hidden 15 feet under the collapsed Temple of Amun. Yeah, oops. A project led by the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology poked around the area and also found a 4th century Greek funerary area. Yeah, this whole area was just haunting. Just a lot of curses here. Ancient graveyards underwater. This is where curses were born, my friend. Leave this part of history alone. Number 6. The Vasa shipwreck. Back in 1628, the Vasa sunk within 20 minutes of setting sail. That's not a good thing. That's tragic. How does this happen? It claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. The Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10th, 1628, and it was once considered a high-tech warship, even referred to once as spectacular, believe it or not. So yeah, again, what happened? Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard, and the second rush completely sank it. That's how fast it was. There was even a crowd around and everything to send this mighty ship off. But the 64 bronze cannons that were installed during the rushed process of building the warship were deemed too heavy. Yeah, the lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story and for us to figure out what went wrong. And the Vasa was built with carvings all around the king at the time, which was King Gustav II. So historical find, yes. Tragic, also definitely yes. Humans focusing too much on naval warfare rather on if the ship can actually stay afloat. I can't tell if this is a curse or just humans being humans. Is there a difference? Number 5. Bermuda Island. We can't have a list on deep sea curses and not talk about the vanishing island, of course. Bermuda sounds a lot like Bermuda, but don't get the two mixed up. If you try and book a flight for Bermuda, well, you may not even arrive at all. Your TripAdvisor would be like, sorry, is your autocorrect off? What did you mean to say? Bermuda Island was seen on several maps throughout history. Cartographers clocked it numerous times, as you would, an island. This is back in the 16th century, okay? So no one really had any reason to lie, I guess. They're just like, oh, it's a spooky island. They're like, hey, ghosts don't exist. We need to know where land is. No time for fooling. But in 1997, it wasn't seen during a survey. And again, in 2009, when researchers went to go find this location that was once there historically, it was gone. It had vanished from the Gulf of Mexico. It was originally charted off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, and it was 80 square kilometers. That was pretty big, again, but the leading theory to its absence now was that this cartographer once upon a time may have put a fake island on the map just to spot copycats, in case you want to, copy anyone's maps. Do we believe that though? I mean, I'm 50-50. Is this just another Atlantis or another Heraklion, perhaps? Which island is the next to be doomed? Some cartographers say the island has been sunk since 1844, others say it's still moving around to this day. Yeah, so keep your eye open for any drifting islands. Number 4. Ancient Greek shipwreck. The oldest shipwreck discovered in the Black Sea, and you would never guess by looking at it. The ship is from 400 BC. It's an ancient Greek trading vessel, and it's not very large, but somehow this ship has been in great condition for over 2,400 years. Yeah, over a mile below the surface as well. So the lack of oxygen actually preserved the ship. That's why it looks like it sank, a year ago, and not thousands of years ago. John Adams was the principal investigator with the Black Sea Archaeology Project, and he describes the finding as something he never thought was even possible, let alone something he'd witnessed in his lifetime. This discovery changed what we knew about ships in the ancient world. The oldest intact shipwreck known to mankind. Yeah, this won't be beat, ever, I don't think. This thing is older than most curses, so yeah, had to throw it in here. Number 3. The Dragon's Triangle. If you thought the Bermuda Triangle was bad, this one's worse. This triangle takes the blame for disappearing ships and planes and all that horrible stuff, but the occasional UFO sighting too, just to jazz it up. In 1945, a Mitsubishi A6M0 went missing, and the pilot's distress call said the sky was opening up. Yeah, the sky opened. What in the Spider-Man No Way Home is happening here? That's one event, just one, but 10 years later, in 1955, a Japanese ship named the Shinyo Maru lost radio contact in the same exact spot. Triangle o' Doom. It didn't take long for the New York Times to coin the term the Devil's Sea, which I'm sure helped this whole curse story. All these spooky triangles, are ocean currents to blame, or is there something cursed about these devilish triangles? Again, let's try changing the name up, see how Mother Earth feels, Instead of calling it the Devil's Triangle, call it the Nice Triangle, and then maybe she'll stop. Number 2. Chuck Lagoon. This lagoon was Japan's main base during the war, but come 1944, the United States launched an attack in what some deem is now Japan's Pearl Harbor. This is when 60 ships were sunk and around 250 planes as well. So for 70 years, there's been a massive graveyard just sitting in the Pacific, and it wasn't until recently where we finally got a good look at these haunting artifacts from history. A photographer by the name of Super Jolly went down and did the dirty work for us. He called this shoot one of the scariest dives he's ever done in his entire life. Yeah, rightfully so. I can't even swim with goggles in my lake, let alone go somewhere. What? No way. They described the atmosphere filled with human skulls and gas masks and bullets as haunting. It was like an abandoned museum underwater, all the things that you don't want to run into while you're diving. Nobody was expecting these artifacts to be all that well preserved after all this time, but photos are even still intact too, so it's a haunting reminder of naval warfare, as are a couple of these other ones. And finally, number 1, MV Derbyshire. This ship was twice the size of the Titanic, but James Cameron didn't make a movie about it, so many of you may not know the grim details. 42 years ago, the MV Derbyshire was the largest British registered merchant ship of all time to sink during peacetime. What makes this tragedy even more memorable was there was no distress call at all, or even wreckage found for quite a while. She was assembled back in 1976, but she was lost in 1980. She was en route from Canada to Japan. Although she was following proper ocean routes with weather routing companies, it still went down. September 15th, 1980, a search began for the missing ship and crew, but 6 days later, the search was called off. Nothing was found at all. The ship was declared lost, and the sister ship of the MV Derbyshire ended up sinking as well later on in 1986 due to a deck cracking problem. So the families then urged officials to search again for the MV Derbyshire, and it's a good thing they reached out, because come 1999, the Derbyshire was found. Don't give up that look. If you ever lose something, just keep looking, even if it's, a cursed haunting shipwreck. Always keep looking, I guess.
Starting us off at number 10 is True North. Very few places on Earth will ever actually point to true north. What is true north? True north is the direction that points exactly towards the geographic North Pole. Being that there are next to no markers and obviously no landmarks in the middle of the ocean, when GPS and other high-tech systems go awry, ships and other craft are forced to use their compasses as a way to stay on track. Compasses operate usually by pointing towards magnetic north, as the compass aligns with Earth's magnetic field. Magnetic north can shift depending on the change in the Earth's magnetic core, which operators and sailors are prepared for, thus creating a huge issue when operators and sailors traveling through the mysterious triangle discover that their compass is no longer working properly, because it's pointing to true north instead of magnetic north. I'll be honest, it's been a while since I've ever had to use a compass, and I think no matter what my compass reads, I would still be lost at sea. So Bermuda doesn't sound like the greatest vacay spot, but let's continue to see what's in store before we make up our mind. At number 9, we have the deepest spot on Earth. So we always talk about how much we want to keep exploring space and we want to get to know our own universe, but you know what's really funny to me? We still have barely scraped the surface, or under the surface, for exploring our own ocean. One of those places being the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is home to one of the deepest spots on Earth. Underneath the surface, the topography of the seafloor goes from a gentle sloping continental shelf to a drop of a few hundred feet to another drop of a few who knows how many thousand feet. Many disappearances that have been reported in the Bermuda Triangle could have their answers laying somewhere at the bottom of these deep trenches. But until we actually start exploring our oceans just as much as we explore space, just like whatever lays at the bottom, we will be left in the dark. At our number 8 spot, we have methane gas. This gas is colorless, odorless, highly flammable, and one of the main components in natural gas, which we all use to generate electricity and heat our homes all around the world. But guess what? It's also in the Bermuda Triangle. Due to decomposing sea organisms, scientists have discovered large concentrations of methane gas trapped in the ocean floor. Methane accumulates as concentrated methane ice, and if and when a pocket ruptures, the gas rockets upwards towards the surface without any warning or notice to those sailing above. If a ship were to be in the area of the blowout, it could possibly sink because the water would become much less dense and sediment could quickly cover it as the wreck lands on the sea floor. As of right now, there is no proof that this is the reason for any of the missing ships that have been reported in the Bermuda Triangle, but then again, how would we ever know? At our number 7 spot, we have Rogue Waves. Now does that not sound like a great band name or what? Due to the location of the Bermuda Triangle in the Atlantic Ocean, storms can come from all directions. They can come from Mexico, from the equator, or the east side of the Atlantic. These storms of course make major waves reaching up to 30 feet or 10 meters tall, but what happens when they all come together at the exact same moment? These rogue waves can reach up to sizes of 100 feet or 30 meters tall. Engineers at the University of Southampton built models of different sized ships and simulated their own rogue waves in a wave tank for the small scale ships. What happened? These engineers discovered that these ships could indeed sink. The bigger the ship, the easier it was to sink, because big ships are designed to be supported in the front by the top of a wave, while the back is supported by another. But if hit by a rogue wave, those big ships, guess what? They snap in two. The small ones can sometimes survive if they hit the wave bow on, but most times will just get swallowed up completely. Rogue waves, hopefully not coming to an ocean near you. At our number 6 spot, we have electronic fog. So far, out of the many distress calls claiming to come from an electronic fog, these stories and events have been labeled as supernatural and not taken seriously. But there are reports from actual pilots who have flown through these strange phenomena, and it's wild. Veteran pilot Bruce Gernon reports that when he was flying with his father in his classic Bonanza plane back in 1970, about 3 miles off Andros Island, an elliptical shaped cloud began forming in front of them. Before the father and son could escape the path of this mysterious cloud, they were engulfed and had a tunnel form all the way around them. And while in the cloud flying at 10,000 feet, they reported seeing lines in the tunnel spiraling counterclockwise while propelling them forward. They then started feeling the effects of zero gravity, and all of their navigational systems started to fail. Fortunately, this electronic spiraling fog tunnel dissipated and they found themselves right over Miami Beach and were once again able to pick up radar. The next strange thing? They traveled 100 miles in 30 minutes less time than usual. Similar stories to Gernon's have been reported as well, but with no real answers to how or why. Some suspect it could be something related to the Hutchison effect, but as of right now, the electronic fog is still a mystery. Coming in at our number 5 midway spot is the once infamous mythical creature proven to be real, the giant squid. Aside from the many strange events and things found in the Bermuda Triangle, some have reported seeing a giant octopus, or octopi if there are more than one. I wonder. Now, as of right now, there is no such thing as these creatures, but giant squid are indeed a real animal, and 2 Japanese scientists believe they caught one on camera. In 2005, 2 Japanese scientists spotted a giant squid aggressively taking baited lines. Normally, these creatures are not known to be in this area of ocean, but the footage says differently. These giant squid can reach up to 150 feet. Seeing the aggressive nature of this creature, as well as the size, it is no wonder some believe that they could be responsible for some of the disappearing ships. Speaking of, coming in our top 4 spot, we have ships that have gone missing. As I said earlier, there are more than 50 ships that are reported to have gone missing in the Bermuda Triangle over the years. One of the most notorious ones being the USS Cyclops. One of the Navy's largest fuel ships went missing back in March 1918. This ship was carrying 10,800 tons of manganese ore with 309 crew members on board. Only one message was received from the ship during its voyage from Brazil to Baltimore, and it reported no trouble whatsoever while it was out on the sea. But then, it sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. The ship never made it to its destination, was never found. Not only was the ship never found, but also no debris or crew members either. There was no distress call received anywhere. One of the largest ships in the Navy, and everything on board and everyone on board gone missing in a flash with no explanation? That's scary. Starting us off at our number 3 spot is planes gone missing. Over 20 aircraft, just like ships, have gone missing over the years, and some of these reports are quite recent too. One of the latest being just last year in May, when a small twin-engine plane mysteriously went missing. Same thing as the USS Cyclops, those aboard started their flight with no complications whatsoever, and there were no distress calls reported or anything out of the ordinary. Once again, no wreckage, crew, or any signs of any explanation can be found. But maybe our next one on the list will help. At our number 2 spot, we have UFO sightings. If you have been keeping up to date with any of the alien news lately, you will know that there have been more than a couple of sightings all over North America in the last few years. One of them taking place over the Bermuda Triangle, April 28, 2020, reported by not just anyone, but the United States Air Force. Many of the United States Air Force members have come out quite recently with more and more sightings, with some of them dating all the way back to the 1970s, right over top of the Bermuda Triangle. I hear more and more alien information every day, and I am loving it. If I ever have a major reason to go to Bermuda, it's to see some aliens. Come on, who's coming with me? Finally, coming in at our number 1 spot is something we're going to have to grab our proton packs for, because our final and weirdest thing found in Bermuda is ghost ships. Back in 1881, the infamous Ellen Austin ship experienced a ghost ship in an area of the Bermuda Triangle before things went awfully awry. The crew of the Ellen Austin discovered the ship fully stocked but with no crew on board or anywhere to be seen. Seeing an opportunity for a free ship with supplies, part of the Ellen Austin crew took over the ship and prepared to sail back with the ships side by side. Just then, an unexpected storm came out of nowhere and totally engulfed the two ships. After the storm was over the next day, both ships came out of the Terror, but no crew was anywhere to be seen on the picked up ghost ship. Just then, crew members and captain of the Ellen Austin came aboard once again and then got swallowed up by a mysterious fog. And once the fog cleared, the ghost ship completely vanished along with everything and everyone. I hate to say it, but I guess that's karma, and she's always gonna come for you.
Kicking off the list at number 10, living fossils. Also referred to as crinoids, but living fossils sounds way better, definitely. These little guys went extinct 273 million years ago, or at least so we thought. We found these dudes this past year, and they're these non-skeletal corals. They're cousins to starfish and sea urchins, but I gotta admit, they don't look nearly as cool. Starfish are the coolest, they're OGs. Discovered on the Pacific Ocean floor, this type of coral will attach itself to the stem of Japanese sea lily, and then they just become one over time. Any type of ocean life that undergoes symbiosis, that creeps me right out. I don't like barnacles, I have a fear of the ocean, and I'm super glad that we're doing this list. So let's move on as I get goosebumps. Ugh, I hate this. Thalassophobia, I think, is like a fear of deep water. I have that. I also have a fear of shallow water. I can't swim. Number 9, Chuck Lagoon. This lagoon was Japan's main base during the war, but come 1944, the United States launched an attack, what some deem is Japan's Pearl Harbor, where 60 ships were sunk and around 250 planes went down. So for 70 years, there's been a massive graveyard sitting in the Pacific, and it wasn't until recently where we got a good look at these haunting artifacts. A photographer by the name of Super Jolly went down and did the dirty work for us. He called this shoot one of the scariest dives he's ever done in his entire life. They described the atmosphere filled with human skulls, gas masks, and bullets as haunting. Yeah, you don't say. Nobody was expecting these artifacts to be that well preserved after all this time. That's the terrifying thing here. Photos are even still intact. You can see people's family members just sitting at the bottom. How sad is that? It's a haunting reminder of naval warfare, and also humans mostly suck. Number 8, MV Derbyshire. This ship was twice the size of the Titanic, but James Cameron didn't make a movie about it, so let me fill you in with less of a budget. MV Derbyshire was the biggest British registered merchant ship of all time to go down. That's an odd brag, but hear me out. She was assembled in 1976 but lost in 1980 en route from Canada to Japan. A Mayday distress call was never issued, and it was following proper ocean routes with weather routing companies, so they were doing all the right things. What happened? September 15th, 1980, a search began for the missing ship and crew, but 6 days later, the search was called off. Nothing was found. The ship was declared lost. The sister ship of the Derbyshire ended up sinking as well later on in 1986 due to deck cracking, so the families urged officials to search again for answers. Come 1994, the Derbyshire was found. Number 7, Garbage Island. There's a lot of treasure in the sea, but there's also lots of garbage because humans suck. Sorry. I mean, look at the top of the Pacific for the example, not even below it, but right on the surface, we have something called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's located safely in the North Pacific subtropical gyre. There's basically 4 of these large systems, which are just massive swirling ocean currents moving warm and cool water about. They're whirlpools of garbage now. No wonder aliens don't want to come. They're like, no, this looks like let's just go to that planet. A plastic bag, for example, was found at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. We now have the deepest piece of trash. Kinda hard for Ariel to sing under the sea when she's got a plastic bag wrapped around her head. This great patch is larger than you think. It's more than twice the size of Texas. It's grown up to 60,000 square miles. Please recycle. Number 6, Yonaguni Monument. This structure was discovered in the 80s near Yonaguni Island in Japan, and the claim is that this is an ancient city, or it was long ago. It's 160 feet long and 65 feet wide, and we're pretty torn over this one. Some think it's man-made, with the lines being so straight that it looks like paths were literally carved out. And I mean, to be fair, that looks like a little staircase. If this was on land, I'd be climbing all over it. I'd think it was made on purpose, some ancient jungle gym. But the fact that it's so deep underwater makes us think that it was a natural formation, obviously. No one's going down there like pickaxing, holding their breath. The footage of it is pretty incredible. If I were to come across this, there's no way I would believe that it's all natural. What do you guys think? Number 5, holes. If you have trypophobia, you may want to look away for this next one. I have it, but I have a job to do, so I'll suffer. Off the coast of Big Sur, California, a survey revealed about 15,000 holes, and they're all roughly the same size. They all measure up to about 11 meters wide and 1 meter deep. The team at Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute found 15,000 of these, and then they found 5,000 more that are even bigger. The little guys are micro-depressions and the big ones are called pockmarks. Initially, scientists thought methane under the sea floor was coming out to say hello, and then they left a crater. Rovers went down there, tests were done, no methane. In fact, there hasn't even been any activity for 50,000 years. These craters are doing a pretty good job though when it comes to the ecosystem. Now there's deep sea creatures just living in them without paying rent. How rude. They even found a whale skull just laying in one. Imagine being a crab and coming home to that. Number 4. USS Nevada. Deemed the unsinkable ship, and for good reason, the USS Nevada was lost in 1948, and it wasn't until a year ago where she was seen again. Unsinkable ship that sunk. What's going on here? Well, during the 1941 surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the USS Nevada was the only battleship to get away in one piece. But barely. They barely got away. It took years of repairs, but she finally returned to battle in 1944 to support the Normandy invasion. A year later, it assisted the invasions of Okinawa and Iwo Jima, and then 2 atomic bomb tests were performed, and then post-World War II, she was finally deemed too ancient for service. So the Navy used the USS Nevada as target practice, and it took 5 whole days and lots of power to finally sink it. A torpedo was the final strike. And after it sank, the Navy wasn't really sure where exactly it would end up. It was more than 15,000 feet below the surface, so it could have gone literally anywhere. Hence why we can't find anything else on this list. You get it. Cut to last year, May 2020, a joint expedition by Ocean Infinity and Search Inc., led by Dr. James Delgado, found her. Just 65 nautical miles southwest of Pearl Harbor. Took a little while, but we gotcha. Number 3. Amelia Earhart. Yeah, you heard me, Amelia Earhart. The first woman to fly across the Atlantic, was well on her way to setting even more groundbreaking records, but her plane tragically disappeared somewhere over the Pacific in 1937. It's since been a great mystery where the final resting place of Amelia Earhart is, but we may have actually found her remains back in 1940 on the Pacific island of Nikumaroro. The initial examination of these remains were reported to be that of a man. That was the general idea in 1941, but come 2018, however, we now have a different idea. Science got better, our ideas got smarter. Researcher Richard Johns took another look at these lost remains, and since those days we've learned more about Amelia Earhart. Photos have surfaced since, so now he's comparing the bone measurements to her body type, and they're actually pretty sure that that's our missing aviator, and that we had her the whole time and we just didn't know. Number 2. The Dragon's Triangle. The Dragon's Triangle is located in the Pacific, obviously, as are most of these, and it's like the evil sister of the Bermuda Triangle, and just like that triangle, this one also takes the blame for disappearing ships and planes, and apparently UFOs are flying about. Of course. It's referred to as the Devil's Sea. These names are so scary sounding. Like, I don't know, change the names and maybe it won't be spooky anymore. Just an idea. There have been UFO sightings, magnetic anomalies, planes and ships vanish. In 1945, for example, a Mitsubishi A6M0 went missing and the pilot's distress call said the sky is opening up. Then they disappeared. 1955, a Japanese ship named the Shinyo Maru lost radio contact, and it didn't take long for the New York Times to coin the term the Devil's Sea. All these spooky triangles are ocean currents to blame, or is there something truly paranormal about the Devil's Triangle? Let us know in the comments down below. See Illuminati confirmed. And finally, number 1, crop circles. We'll finish this list off with a cute one, I guess, although I'm arguing this is still pretty terrifying. Crop circles on the ocean floor. Aliens confirmed. They were first spotted back in 1995 off the southern coast of Japan, and for 16 years these things were blowing the minds of divers. Nobody knew where they were coming from. They would just be there one week and then gone the next. Tiny aliens or tiny pufferfish? That's right. In 2011, one of these dudes got caught in 4K, and it's one of the weirdest but most cute things I've ever seen. These male pufferfish, they try and lure in the ladies by making art. Yeah, some birds dance like crazy with their weird mouth-looking wing things. Some fish make art. I don't know. Deal with it. Animals are... The thing that baffles me, concerns me if anything, is that the pufferfish uses a shell, like he uses a tool to carve out his emotions. Check this out.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have spoonworms. Spoonworms are a strange looking little creature that can be found in many areas of the ocean, and of course, even in the Mariana Trench. These guys are basically just plump, unsegmented worms that find their homes in the burrows on the seabed. Different members of this animal family can live at different temperatures, but most of the deep sea variety live deeper than 3,000 meters where the water is icy cold. The deep sea spoonworms often see the female females growing much larger than the males, and in most instances, the males end up living inside, or at least on the females. I'm not entirely sure of the logistics of that, but it does sound awful. In these species, their stomachs are much longer than their bodies, so their gut ends up folded and coiled inside of them, which I guess isn't unsimilar to human intestines. In our number 9 spot today, we have volcanic glass. Did you know that there are volcanoes underwater, even in the deep sea? Right near the Mariana Trench in 2015, scientists found evidence of what was the deepest ever known volcanic eruption. They didn't catch the actual eruption, but they knew it had happened because of the volcanic glass they found 3 miles or 4,800 meters below the sea. This discovery was huge because it is not often that we find deep sea volcanic eruptions, but it was the first time scientists had found one that had erupted very recently. The volcanic glass is created because of the hot magma coming into contact with the icy cold waters, which cools it down quickly. This discovery helped scientists understand what happens when an eruption occurs underwater, such as how some quick-moving creatures find their home in the aftermath almost immediately. It is said that around 80% of the world's volcanic eruptions occur under the water, and it's still something we know so little about, so this discovery gave us an incredibly important look at what happens afterwards. In our number 8 spot today, we have the sea cucumber. Sea cucumbers are creatures that can be found all over the oceans on our Earth, even in the most extreme environments, such as the Mariana Trench. These guys have many different appearances, but they all look somewhat like a giant worm or some kind of spiky, slimy cucumber. They're often called the vacuum cleaners of the ocean as they mainly feed on tiny particles of algae or microscopic marine animals, and they play a vital role in recycling marine nutrients. They have a bunch of little tentacles that they use to eat, and they can often be found on or close to the sea floor. There are a few species of sea cucumbers that can swim, but not all of them do. In some species, their tentacles are even able to secrete a mucus net that can be used to trap small planktonic organisms. One really crazy thing about some kinds of sea cucumbers is that they can expel their internal organs when threatened. This would seem like a huge problem, but sea cucumbers can regenerate their organs quite quickly after. They also don't have a brain, which I felt like was important to include. I guess maybe if we take our brains out, then can we regenerate our own organs? I'm just joking, obviously. In our number 7 spot today, we have rat tails. These fish are usually fairly large, and while most species belonging to this family are deep sea fish, there's one specific species that are found in the Mariana Trench. These fish have larger heads and eyes, but then their body tapers out into a thin tail fin, which is how they got their common name. Rat tails are one of the most common deep water fish, and they like to snack on things like smaller fish, some kinds of crustaceans, and even sometimes lanternfish. These fish are great scavengers, which is an important part of the deep sea ecosystem. When these fish are young, they tend to stay in more shallow water, but as they grow older, they migrate further into the icy cold depths of the sea. In our number 6 spot today, we have barophilic bacteria. This bacteria is characterized by its preference for an environment with pressure greater than our atmospheric pressure, which of course makes the trench a perfect candidate for a home. These bacteria have been isolated from deep sea environments and found to grow rapidly at low temperatures and high pressures. This low temperature high pressure combo that is found in the deep sea environment is usually the cause for the decrease of the fluidity of lipids, as well as the depression of the function of biological membranes. But this doesn't happen in this bacteria, which has led to the theory that they must have some sort of mechanism that allows their lipids to adapt to their extreme environment. Aside from their superpower, these bacteria help to support life by being a source of carbon for the deep sea animals that end up ingesting them. In our number 5 spot today, we have immense pressure. In every part of this video series, I have talked about the extreme environment that is the Mariana Trench and just how much pressure exists down there, but I haven't taken the time to really dive into just how much pressure is down there, so we're gonna do that now. The deeper you go into the ocean, the more pressure you'd feel. Close to the surface of the ocean, we're sitting at a base of 1 atmospheric pressure, but when you go just 10 meters deep, that number already doubles. Considering the Mariana Trench is 11,000 meters deep, this is obviously going to increase greatly. The pressure causes the air in your body to compress, and the deeper you go, the more dense the water becomes. While the concept of the increasing pressure is easy to understand, it truly is really hard to conceptualize how this change happens and just how deep this trench really is. 1 atmospheric pressure is 1.01325 bars, which is the unit used to measure pressure. So like I mentioned before, this is where we were sitting when close to the surface of the ocean, but in the depths of the Mariana Trench, that number skyrockets to 1,086 bars, which apparently would be the equivalent of 100 elephants standing on you. So it's suddenly making a lot more sense as to why people don't journey down to the Challenger Deep very often. In our number 4 spot today, we have arrowtooth eels. The arrowtooth eels that reside in the Mariana Trench are a species that not much is known about. These eels range somewhere from 23 to 160 centimeters or 9.1 to 63 inches in length. They're a bottom-dwelling fish and can be found in waters around 3,700 meters or 12,100 feet deep. They can be told apart from other eels in their early stages because of their telescopic eyes during the larva stage. These guys like to feed on the scraps left over from other larger fish meals as well as invertebrates, but they have also been known to be partly parasitic as they sometimes burrow into the flesh of other fish. Here's a little clip of one swimming past a camera that is located around 11,000 meters deep in the sea. In our number 3 spot today, we have the hydrothermal vents. The Mariana Trench is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is a tectonically active region where plates are colliding and causing subduction, which is how the trench itself was formed. Through this tectonic activity, as seawater seeps downwards through the oceanic crust, it gets really hot and becomes very rich in chemicals. This leads to the water becoming so buoyant that it comes back out of the surface of the sea floor, and this is what is called a hydrothermal vent. The water coming out of the vent is that same super hot, super chemically rich water, and it is an extremely important part of underwater ecosystems. The water from the vent is highly acidic and hot, while the water in the depths of the ocean is slightly basic and freezing cold. There are many different smaller species who come to the vent areas because of the chemicals in the water as well as the heat, which helps certain types of food sources grow, which they then want to consume. This then leads to it being a feeding hotspot, as larger predators can also come to the vent to feed on the other smaller organisms that are already in the feeding area. There are usually a high amount of animals found in the area of a hydrothermal vent, but not a wide variety of different animals, as the temperature extreme is not suited for everyone in the deep sea. In our number 2 spot today, we have vent crabs. Okay, so to piggyback off of the last point, we have a creature that loves the hydrothermal vents, and that is the aptly named vent crab. These white crabs are actually endemic to hydrothermal vents, and they were first described in 1980. The crabs in this family are usually blind and abundant. In fact, their numbers are so vast that scientists often use the clusters of them to help find the location of the hydrothermal vents. The eyes of vent crabs change throughout their life, which helps them adapt to their environment. Young vent crabs usually have eyes that would be comparable to their shallow water companions, but upon metamorphosis, their eyes degenerate and become naked retinas. Hydrothermal vents produce light in the infrared wavelengths, and this change in the vent crab's eyes actually allows them to better see this light, although it causes them to not be able to see most other things. It's like a similar concept to night vision goggles. So basically, vent crabs have night vision, I guess? It is so interesting to see and learn about how these deep sea creatures adapt to their individual environments and circumstances. Vent crabs often eat tiny organisms and bacteria, which is another reason they thrive near the vents. In our number 1 spot today, we have giant isopods. Before I dive into this, number 1 point, make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. It really helps us out. Despite their appearance, these guys are neither aliens or pill bugs and are just another one of those strange and weirdly large deep sea creatures. These rather large crustaceans can reach lengths of around 15 inches, and while that's not the biggest deep sea creature out there, that's still pretty insane for the isopod world. These guys get their size from what is known as deep sea gigantism, which is an evolutionary tendency for deep sea creatures to grow larger than their shallow water counterparts. It isn't exactly clear why this happens, but it does, and is seen in a few different species, such as those giant shrimps we were talking about last time. It is thought that it may be due to the cold temperatures, which may increase cell size and lifespan, which both may lead to increased body size. Giant isopods are related to woodlice, albeit distant cousins, which is why they look kind of similar. These guys are scavengers who usually wait to collect the scraps of whatever is left over from another predator's meal, whether those leftovers are located on the seafloor or if they're falling from the waters above like sea snow.